with all this death shit. I don't listen to naughty talk. Monogamy a death wish. Grow around body chalk. Chop bodies a neck slit. Fist fights turn grippy. Shots in the lobby exit. 12 don't give a fuck about. Hoping fall in the next shift. Couple pumps on his chest. All at the EMS get. On the east they be sliding. On the west where they wet shit. That product of that product. Coke dope for that meth shit. That big bag Bugatti crib. Bad bitch on that checklist. That cold worldwide. No matter what your complexions. Shit, my whip might be your truck. Fuck it, chop or tomahawk. Gas from the guards when you eating good. That designer talk easy, but not from the shooter that's in the mud. You got pups he gotta feed, so it's easier through the plug. This ain't just gang shit. Got neutral niggas that shoot a slug for the same shit. Bitches and chickens with who you fuck. Pussy a pop on you. You see him getting stressed. Nigga mind on violated. He see him getting stretched. Day and night, no cutty shit. He play it and repeat it till it's time to lock and load it, spray it and delete it. Give a fuck how real it is. Don't say it if you speak it. There's an automatic response to break you into pieces. Jesus don't come and scoop niggas till after they dead. Before then, collect calls when niggas after your head. You better off letting a few fly up in the odds. Evening, act like you trying to get the fuck out of Dodge. The season is either you put in that jersey or got the plates. Meaning either you active or sturdy or out the way. You can't be on both strips. No matter what the roads say. End up a nigga fit, half a bottle of rosé.
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up. That sums it up. Hey, what's happening? Happy Wednesday, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Happy Wednesday. How's everybody doing? Yeah, everybody's doing good. Yeah. Is everybody being good? Are you being good for, because Christmas is around the corner. Santa's, taking the list of who's been naughty, who's been nice. Okay, so 3 hours. We're going to get through this Tartaria thing. So let me go burn through all my clips. Shout out to everybody that's here. What's up? Greg Deep, Malg's. Hey, man, listen. Hi, Chief, what's happening? Lamont, what's happening? I did say this thing is rigged for Argentina to win. I watched that game last night. And the way Argentina I'm sitting here like, you've got to, at the very last, literally the last 5 minutes of the game, they done scored 2 goals. I would not be surprised if Argentina wins the World Cup against Spain. These motherfuckers in the stands crying. Anywho, it was a good game until they made the phone call. So we're going to do this. We're going to burn through all these clips. We're going to get to Tartaria because I'm tired of it sitting in my queue, just looking at me like every day. It's looking at me like I'm still here. I'm like, fuck. So we're going to burn through all this. He's going to burn through it all. 3 hours. 3 hours. That's all I got. Okay. So, first things first, Emmy nominations came out last week. Let's go over the Emmy nominations. Okay, tell me what you see, tell me what you don't see. Go here. Emmy nominations came out last week. I don't know how I missed this, but I'm here for it. So, let's go here. Nominations by program. Okay, The Pit, 25 nominations. Hacks, 24. Widow's Bay, 19. I have to start watching Widow's Bay. I will start watching Widow's Bay. Pluribus, 18. Beef, 16. DTF St. Louis, 13. SNL, 11. Spider Noir was pretty good. Do I need a season 2 of it? No. It was good. The halftime Super Bowl show, 9. The Night of the Seven Kingdoms got 9 nominations. RuPaul's, 9. The Bear, 8. Gilded Age, 8. Abbott Elementary, 7. Euphoria, 7. Interesting. We'll see what these categories were for. Ed Gein, Charlie Hunnam got 7. Paradise, 7. Stranger Things, 7. Jimmy Kimmel, 6. Let's see. The Boys got 5. Okay. All right. So let's go here. Nominations. I know it is. I'm gonna get into it. I just came from FIFA. Yeah, that's what's up. Okay. Nominations Pay attention. Nominations by platform. HBO Max, 122 nominations. Netflix, 111 nominations. Apple TV, 87 nominations. ABC, 38. CBS, 32. NBC, 30. Prime Video, 28. I'm going down the list for a reason. FX Hulu, 23. Hulu by itself, 22. Peacock, 18. Disney Plus, 14. Nat Geo, 12. MGM Prime, 11. MTV, 11. Comedy Central, 8. YouTube, 6. Bravo, 5. PBS, 5. Fox, 3. ABC, Adult Swim, Discovery Channel all have 2. AMC, BBC, BET Plus, Food Network, History Channel, Investigation Discovery, MetaQuest, Paramount Plus, Showtime, Vimeo all have 1. Who's not on this list? Pop quiz. What platform does not have an Emmy nomination for none of its programs this year? What program do you not see on this list? I'll give you guys time. We got everything from HBO Max all the way down to Vimeo, y'all. Vimeo has an Emmy nomination. Whose program do you not see on this list? That's right. No stars. No stars. I wonder why that is. Huh. Yeah. I wonder why that is. I thought Raising Kanan was doing phenomenal and, making waves. And oh my God, the writing, the storytelling. I don't know what I'm talking about. I thought, okay. I just wanted to add that salt in the wound to you power sycophants. Okay. Let's see here. Outstanding drama series. These are all the executive producers for these different shows. Look how many executive producers for The Diplomat on Netflix. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 executive producers. 2 co-exec producers. That's insane. The Gilded Age on HBO Max. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 executive producers. 7. 8. No, 8. 8 executive producers. 1 co-exec. Night of the Seven Kingdoms. Lord have mercy. Look how many pieces, how many slices of this pie is getting cut up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 executive producers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 co-executive producers. And I'm glad I gave this show a chance, because the first 2 episodes I was like, this shit is whack. I'm so glad I gave this show a chance. This is a very, very good show. Very slow in the beginning. Paradise, y'all. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 executive producers. The Pit has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 executive producers. Pluribus, my God. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 exec producers. And on and on. Look at this. Slow Horses. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 executive producers. Cha. Okay, so here we go with the actors nominations. Carrie Coon as Bertha in The Gilded Age. Chase Infinity for The Testaments as Agnes. Kerry Russell for The Diplomat. Rhea Seehorn for Pluribus. Zendaya for Euphoria. Please don't let this bitch win. I'm so tired of. I swear I am. I really am tired of her. Outstanding lead actor in a drama series. Sterling K. Brown in Paradise. I just can't get into this show. I can't. I love Sterling K. Brown. He's one of my favorite actors. I just can't get into that show. Gary Oldman for Slow Horses. Mark Ruffalo for Task. Rufus Sewell for The Diplomat. Noah Wiley, again, for The Pit, for like the 5th year in a row. Outstanding comedy series. Abbott Elementary. How many exec producers you got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I get it. The Bear. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 exec producers. Hacks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 exec producers. Lord have mercy. You see where I'm going with this, right? Okay. Widow's Bay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 exec producers. That's not too bad. Outstanding lead and actress in a comedy series. Quinta Brunson. of course, is always there. Ayo Idibiri for the Bear. She's that dark skinned African chick, right? Elle Fanning for Margot's Got Money Troubles. Lisa Kudrow for The Comeback. Jean Smart for Hacks. Outstanding lead in a comedy series. Yahya Abdul Mateen for Wonder Man. I have still not have watched this. I have no desires to watch this. From those that I know have watched it, they liked it, but I'm so over anything with extended characters, one-off characters, no-name characters when it comes to Disney Marvel. I have no desire to watch no goddamn Wonder Man. Steve Carell Rooster, Matthew Reese, Widow's Bay, Jason Segel for Shrinking, Martin Short, Only Murders in the Building. Outstanding limited or anthology series. Once again, I don't see nothing for Power. I could be wrong. Maybe it's down here somewhere. I don't know. I hear good things about Beef. Check out. Oh my goodness. Love Story 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 executive producers. Good grief almighty. Oh, this one's even worse. DT up to St. Louis. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 executive producers. Can't make this shit up, people. Outstanding lead actress in a limited or anthology series. Claire Danes, Beast and Me. Sally Field for Remarkably Bright Creatures. Carey Mulligan for Beef. Sarah Pigeon for Love Story. Sarah Snook for All Her Fault. What else we got? Outstanding lead actor in a limited or anthology series. Riz Ahmed for Bait. Jason Bateman for Black Rabbit. Yo, him and his sister's career is just night and day. It's almost like Hollywood is trolling this brother and sister combination. I see Justine on Twitter just going in on Hollywood, and this man out here just living his best goddamn Hollywood life. Charlie Hunnam for Monster, the Ed Gein story. Oscar Isaac for Beef. Matthew Reese for The Beast and Me. All right, outstanding supporting actress in a drama series. Taylor Dearden, Fiona Dorff, Allison Janney, Catherine Lanasa, Sepide Moafi, Julian Nicholson, and Carolyn Widra. Okay. Outstanding supporter actor in a drama series. Patrick Ball, Billy Crudup, Sean Hardesty, Joanne Harrell, Jack Lowden, Tom Pelfrey, Carlos Manuel. Okay, outstanding supporting actress in a comedy series. Okay, nobody really stands out to me. Michelle Pfeiffer. Okay, let's continue. Outstanding supporting actor in a comedy series. Coleman Domingo for The Four Seasons. Harrison Ford in Shrinking. Nick Offerman, Stephen Roots, Michael Urie, Tyler James Williams. Okay. Outstanding supporting actress in a limited anthology series or movie. Linda Cardellini, Dakota Fanning, Laurie Metcalf, Joy Sunday, Wu-Tang Clan, Constance Zimmer. Okay. Outstanding supporting. Okay. Jason Bateman again. Richard Gadd, David Harbour, Richard Jenkins, Charles Melton, Nick Offerman. Outstanding variety series. The Daily Show. Okay. Jimmy Kimmel, John Oliver, Stephen Colbert. I wouldn't be surprised if he wins just to stick it to Trump. I would not be surprised if the Academy, they vote for him to win just to stick it to Trump. That'd be a nice little FU. SNL. Outstanding reality competition, Dancing with Stars, RuPaul's Drag Race, Survivor, Top Chef, and The Traitors. Creative Arts Emmys, we don't care about all that. Once again, I don't see no nominations for Stars. I don't see no nominations for Stars. Nothing for Power, because 50 be the first one to tell you if his shit got nominated for an Emmy. Once I go go ask 50, hey, what happened? What happened? What happened? Why no nominations this year? Right? Oh my God, Patina Miller, she kills it as Rock. Yeah, true. But her peers are like, bitch, no, bitch. You play a queen pin that you really. I mean, let's be real. Like we've seen that many times before. Many, many times before. Oh my God, this is a long ass bunch of nominations. Okay, I just wanted to kind of gloat a little bit. No stars, nominations, no nominations for Power. None of the Power series, none of them. The ones that y'all claim are so good. But I know Hollywood is racist. They would never, admit that it's great programming. Sure. Gotcha. I hear you. Let's go here. Some stuff in development. Alan Rickson. He's going to be this guy's going to be the new Stallone, new Schwarzenegger. This is going to be your new 2020s action star. Because all he does is just manly stuff. And people flock to it because that's what people want to see. Nobody wants to see 5-foot women kicking ass. That's not realistic. What's realistic? This man is 6'5", 280. I believe what he does on screen. Okay. So they're doing a movie called Maelstrom. It's let's see. The film follows a federal marshal guarding the fiance of an arms dealer seeking witness protection. Oh, we've seen this before with Schwarzenegger and Vanessa Williams. What was that movie, y'all? They had the rail guns. That's the first time they brought out like the mini rail guns. People were like, "That's not real. They don't have that technology." Okay. What was it called, y'all? Schwarzenegger had to protect Vanessa Williams. Yeah, he was a marshal, and he had to protect Vanessa Williams. What was the name of that movie? Same premise. Events unfold over the course of one evening as a hurricane rolls in, blocking outside communication and preventing reinforcements from arriving. No, not Running Man, dude. No. What the hell? Hella wrong, bruh. No. It's one of his more underrated movies. I don't feel like looking it up. Some of y'all know it. Yeah, there you go. Eraser. Thank you. Together, they must fight to survive the onslaught of men working for the arms dealer, as well as the escalating elements of the natural disaster raging outside. Okay, so we got another manly movie with Alan Rickson coming out. This is what people want, truth be told. Okay, all right. What else we got? If you have young children, if you care, you're getting another Transylvania movie. It comes out next year, October 8th, 2027. The Haunting of Hotel Transylvania. This is their 5th movie. And I get it, man. As long as it keeps making money, why not? The franchise has grossed $1.38 billion. Okay. So in this new installment, Drac has happily settled into retirement while Mavis takes the reins of the legendary Monster Hotel. But when a series of spooky and unexplained happenings send chills through the resort, the Drac Pack embarks on its most spellbinding adventure yet, uncovering the mystery behind the Haunting of Hotel Transylvania. Okay. All right. That's cute. What is this? Oh, once again, horror is the way. So we got another Conjuring movie coming out. I'm liking this. Next year, September 2027. Let's see. Yeah, this is in development. The prequel, The Conjuring First Communion. I'm here for it, man. This would be your new Ed and Lorraine. I'm here for it. I'll go see it. Okay. All right, let's do this. The Batman's been delayed by 4 months. This is the new can't even call it a new teaser trailer. This is the teaser trailer for the delayed Batman 2 coming out in February of 2027. I see nothing different. The collar still looks the same. You could have kept this. Honestly, you could have kept this. Listen, I hate James Gunn. I blame James Gunn for everything related to this movie being delayed for nearly 2 years. James Gunn stole this man's original villain. You know, people forget that Clayface was the original villain for the Batman sequel. And all of a sudden, James Gunn says, nope, I'm going to take that character and make its own little low-budget horror film, which is why Matt Reeves gets a producer credit on that movie for Clayface. Okay? Pay attention. James Gunn is disgusting. Narcissistic, megalomaniac. Disgusting. Disgusting, disgusting, disgusting. Okay. Let's go here. Ryan Garcia versus Conor Benn. This should be a good fight.
It is official. Ryan Garcia versus Conor Benn is signed and taking place September 12th, live from T-Mobile Arena here in Las Vegas. Garcia is the world welterweight champion, Ring Magazine's 5th ranked welterweight in the world. He has 25 wins, and 20 of those came by knockout. And he is facing Conor Benn, who is 25-1 with 14 knockouts. His only loss is the Eubanks Jr., and he immediately avenged that loss. These guys have been going back and forth on social media, and this fight is going to be awesome. Live on Mexican Independence Weekend, September 12th, live globally on Paramount Plus and on DAZN in the UK and Ireland. I'll see you here in Vegas.
We'll definitely do a watch party for that because I have Paramount Plus. Definitely, that should be a good fight. Okay. Now, let's do this. Oh boy. You need more proof that this society is not ready to deal with autistic children. All right, let's go. Let's go. Okay, pay attention. Now, once again, this is how they used to deal with autistic children in 1952. 1952. Pay attention.
Good boy. Marty, touch my ear.
First step in getting control over Marty was inducing him to imitate simple gestures on demand, like clapping his hands.
Marty, clap your hands. Clap your hands. In this teaching booth, we can provide both pleasant, rewarding experiences for the child, as well as somewhat unpleasant experiences. For instance, when the child is cooperating and performing as the teacher directs, he may be given a piece of candy from this candy window. Should the child fail to cooperate, fail to pay attention while the teacher is working with him, he may be given a negative reinforcement, such as having the booth closed off and being separated from the teacher until he initiates contact by pushing a button on his side of the booth.
It took 2 months to teach Marty these responses, but this was the first time his behavior had ever been effectively controlled.
I don't think y'all understand. Y'all don't understand. Oh my God, wait. Let's find part 2. Let's find part 2. Please tell me you have part 2. Ma'am, is this it? Let's go.
B. Marty.
By repeating the sound and offering him a candy reward, he hoped to train Marty to imitate him. He could then try to shape Marty's sound into a real word, but it did not work. If Marty would not vocalize for candy, would he speak up to avoid a punishment, like turning out the lights?
Oh, snap.
B. Good boy.
Man, listen, psychology in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s was on some underground dungeon. Oh my God.
B. Good.
Finally,
boy.
the candy worked too. Marty had taken a step toward acquiring speech.
Wow. It breaks my heart when he kisses the man, Bro got results. Why are people upset? It worked. Teaching tricks and rewarding them for it is for dogs, not humans. It's the same thing. Pavlov's experiments, we do that all the time with each other. What are you talking about, man? But autism is new, right? Oh, vaccines, right? Screen time, right? Oh, okay. Shit. This is abusive, using fear tactics and absolutely unethical, and I'm happy we've moved on to a human-centered approach. Okay. As a behavior analyst of 12 years, these videos are hard to watch. The field is shifting towards assent withdrawal and keeping our clients happy, relaxed, engaged, and connected over being compliant. It's something I have devoted my life to. Yeah, okay. As a SPED teacher, watching this makes me uncomfortable. It's like training a dog to comply. Thank goodness we know better now. Do we? Ma'am, seriously? Everything is reward punishment. Everything is reward punishment. Anywho. Okay, let's continue. BBB. Hey, white man in their 50s. white male psychiatrist and psychologist in their 50s was nothing not to be played with at all. You better do what they're asking you to do. You better do what they're asking you to do. Okay, you need further proof that society doesn't want to deal with these kids? Let's go here. You ready? Our Uber driver pulled up, literally stopped, looked at us, and then drove away. Who wants to be bothered with this? It's not their fault. It's not these people's fault. It's not the child's fault. But once again, society does not want to be bothered. Society is not prepared, nor wants to be prepared to deal with these children. Okay, the Uber said, "I'm out." The Uber said, "Beep beep beep," and he spun and he sped out. Uh-oh. Next time, do a better job and include your child's special accommodations needed in your Uber request. Uber responded, "Hi, Brittany, this isn't okay, and we're sorry this happened. Uber does not tolerate discrimination of any kind. A specialized team is actively investigating and will be in touch." Okay. Uber literally has an assistance option for disabled. Okay. Sounds like you didn't specify with the driver. The driver information is on the app. You expect the driver to accommodate your wheelchair and all the prep work to make sure the car seat is secure. The wheelchair won't cause damage to his vehicle nor get damaged. Then you sue him if your wheelchair broke. That's too much time and too much liability on an independent contractor using his personal car and insurance. He's preaching. You need to order special needs vans for your doctor appointments and transports. Okay. Let's see. What is wrong with these comments? She's mentioned countless times she got the Uber XL, and that was plenty of space for the little girl's wheelchair. Uber was wrong, and they even know it. Would have done the same. I don't want a pet on my Uber, bruh. I see. I'm just saying, man. Ain't nobody trying to deal with this. This is a problem. Okay. All right. People don't want to be bothered. Assets and liabilities, y'all. That's it. That's all. Okay. Now, let's go here to Dubai. Now, they're treating autism like it's complete opposites. You ready? Let's go here. This is what Dubai is doing to combat or help ease the dealings with autistic children. Ready? In Dubai, people of determination is the official term for anyone with autism or special needs. People of determination. The goal is to change how society views people, moving the focus completely away from disability and onto strength, resilience, and ability. I told you, it's the society you're dealing with. Okay, let's continue. Defined by potential. It means people are not defined by a medical condition. Instead, they are recognized for their determination, personality, and potential. A national policy. This isn't just a trendy phrase. It's an official UAE policy actively enforced across all schools, government services, and healthcare systems. So here's what the families in Dubai actually get free Salik toll exemptions for the family in some cases, right to education in mainstream or specialist schools, free health evaluations or regular checkups, access to speech, occupational, and ABA therapy, community support through government offices. This is awesome. Mainstream inclusion. Children are included in regular schools whenever possible with specialized, tailored support so each child can learn in their own unique way. So what that means is they'll be all in the classroom together, but the SPED kid will have his own instructor, but they'll be in the same room with the regular kids. Okay. This terminology is a true mindset shift. It shapes how teachers educate, how families are uplifted, and how society fully embraces everyone. But the autism thing is not going away. In fact, the numbers are increasing every generation. Okay? So that's dope. Once again, society. You have to change how society views these children. Americans are not there yet. I'm just telling you what it is. Okay? Don't shoot the messenger. Wow, let's go here. This is kind of wild. Ready? This is kind of wild.
And she was a PDF file. Because my story is one of generational trauma, I feel like I have to start at the beginning of everything. So I'm going to start with my grandma. We grew up in a very, very religious household where religion was used to manipulate. It's interesting that the first picture ever of my grandma that we have recorded is her in a religious outfit. The stories that she used to tell me about her childhood were that she was typically the least loved child in the family. My grandma was always somebody that was strict. She rarely smiled. When she did, she was typically flirting with a younger man. I guess she's doing like the color guard. I'm not sure if it's for the military or for school. The reason I share her life is because her life is part of the reason that there was generational trauma. My grandma lived in a very cultural Nicaragua. She never smiles in pictures. I know she was abused as a child because she often told us stories. Her mom having favoritism, and this is her with her mom. Her mamita, as she would call her, only loved one of the children. My grandma was one of 5 daughters. So this is my grandma. And she was a PDF file.
Okay. It's a long, she's on TikTok. It's a long get down, y'all. It's super long. I may just keep this in queue. Just if we come back to it's a lot. It's a lot. So basically her grandmother abused her mom and a whole bunch of stuff. Basically at the cause of the grandmother, right? Yeah, we'll say this. We'll just leave this in queue. And let's say that for like a late show when I don't have much to talk about, if that's okay with y'all. Let's go here. Okay. Read the title. Read the caption. Read the caption, y'all. Read the caption. Read the caption. Okay. Kodak Black's baby mama in prison for methamphetamine trafficking begs the judge to release her to treat her HIV. Now, if you're in jail or prison and you have medications, you give them the list and they'll get it for you. That's not enough to let you out. Okay? But let's continue. Let's go. Okay, he writes the letter. This is his letter. Okay? I am writing in capacity as patient care coordinator Brandon Jackson on behalf of Dr. Castro regarding the serious medical condition of Miss Jemiah Broomfield and the urgent need for continuity of medical care. Miss Broomfield is HIV positive and requires ongoing medical monitoring. laboratory evaluation, and specialized treatment to effectively manage her condition. Consistent access to prescribed medication and physician supervision is medically necessary to maintain a viral suppression, preserve immune system function, and prevent disease progression. Our office has been informed that Ms. Broomfield has not been receiving her prescribed HIV medication. Any interruption in treatment places her at risk of significant medical complications, including deterioration of immune function, increased susceptibility to opportunistic infections, development of treatment resistance, and overall decline in health status. Jeez. Ms. Broomfield's prescribed antiretroviral medication is Biktarvy. Due to circumstances affecting her treatment regimen, Biktarvy has been discontinued, creating additional challenges in maintaining community or continuity of care. Given her medical history, prior treatment response, and the complexity of her ongoing medical management, any prolonged interruption in treatment or delay in specialized medical follow-up significantly increases the risk of adverse health consequences. The uninterrupted management of HIV is critical to maintaining Ms. Broomfield's health and preventing potentially serious complications. Access to appropriate medical care, physician oversight, and treatment planning is essential to ensuring the best possible health outcomes. For these reasons, we respectfully request that the court consider granting Ms. Broomfield supervised release under any conditions deemed appropriate by the court so that she may immediately resume and maintain the medical care necessary for her health and well-being. Release will allow her health care providers to closely monitor her condition, ensure compliance with treatment recommendations, and reduce the risk of serious complications associated with interrupted medical care. This request is submitted solely on the basis of medical necessity and concern for Ms. Broomfield's health. We respectfully ask that the court take these circumstances into consideration when evaluating her eligibility for supervised release. Should the court require any additional medical documentations or verifications from Dr. Castro, our office stands ready to provide the necessary information. Thank you for your prompt attention to this matter. God damn. Child. What in the hell? How does it look? What's wrong with having HIV? Why are people acting like it's taboo? In 2026, if you have people the option to pick cancer or HIV, everyone will take HIV. It has cure. Jesus Christ. Okay. Oh my God. I don't know. If you had to pick between you know what? That's an excellent poll question. You ready? Excellent poll question. Which would you rather have? HIV or cancer? I don't know. That's kind of crazy, y'all. That's kind of crazy. What are you picking? What are you guys picking? That's kind of crazy. I wouldn't want to. Neither one. That's super wild, right? Okay. So I'm not bugging. Let's go here real quick. Let's go to Twitter. I'm late to this. Surveillance status here. First time ever the city of Long Beach in LA County deployed drones to monitor the skies for residents setting off fireworks. The city says drones will help locate illegal fireworks activities. Officials say the drones will be used to identify fireworks hotspots, monitor active incidents, and provide real-time aerial information to personnel responding on the ground. The city also says footage collected during drone operations may be used in evidence in fireworks-related investigations and could be referred to the city prosecutor for possible enforcement under Long Beach's illegal fireworks ordinance. Okay? It's already here, man. Surveillance state and whatever. It's here, man. This is China, right? This is China right here. That's China. Like, we're not too far from this, right? We're not too far from this.
Every day. It uses AI to spot illegal parking, wrong way driving, cars in the emergency lane, speeding, and collects the evidence automatically. And if you're the one doing it, it can talk to you. A voice from the sky telling you to move. this isn't a pilot. Shenzhen runs 17 automated patrol routes. By the end of 2024, these drones had flagged 44,000 traffic incidents. Accident scenes that used to take officers half an hour cleared in about 5 minutes. Honestly, this looks like a deleted scene from Blade Runner, except it's not a movie. It's just Shenzhen on a normal Tuesday. Cyberpunk was supposed to be a warning. Somebody read it as a to-do list. It's already up there, flying. From publicly available sources, this is real. Make of that what you will.
Yeah. It's already here, y'all. Okay. It's already here. No. Let's go here. China once again. 200 million Chinese are now gig workers, writers, or live streamers. Youth unemployment is 16.5%. Economists say the real number is 40%. 70,000 delivery writers hold master's degrees. What? That's insane. China's economy produced a record 12.22 million university graduates in 2025. The job market has almost nothing for them. Many of them ended up on scooters. More than 20% of delivery drivers for Meishuan and Emmy hold college degrees. At least 70,000 hold master's degrees. They are delivering noodles in the rain. Oh no. The pay has been falling for years. In 2019, riders earned 5 to 6 yuan per order. That's roughly less than $1 USD. Now fees for orders over 3 kilometers have been halved to 4.5 yuan. The live streamers face the same math. The top 0.25% of live streamers take 90% of all earnings on the platform. The vast majority earn almost nothing. Could you imagine? This is like a live stream farm. Like, that's insane. Okay. A writer finishes a 12-hour shift, opens Douyin, tips a streamer. The streamer orders dinner. A writer delivers it. Same money, different pocket. Meishuan and Emmy control 98% of China's food delivery market. They charge a fee every time the money moves. Tencent runs the streaming platforms. Alibaba runs the shopping. Meishuan runs the deliveries. They are not growth stocks. They are all toll booths. Beijing noticed the pressure building. In April 2026, the Communist Party issued the first comprehensive labor rules for all 200 million gig workers, y'all. Minimum wage compliance, capped working hours, apps must stop assigning orders once a rider hits the limit, algorithmic transparency required by 2027, the most aggressive gig worker protections any government has ever enacted. The two-camp debate is live in China. Camp 1, the gig economy kept millions employed when factories stopped hiring. It is the safety valve that prevents social collapse. Camp 2, a master's degree holder delivering noodles for 4.5 yuan per order is not employment. It is a waiting room, and the regulations arrived 5 years too late. Oh, that's terrible, man. God damn. That's terrible. Okay, let's go here. Let's keep it going. Burning through these clips, y'all. We burning through these clips.
South Africa in 81, I think it was, because I got arrested in South Africa in 81, I think it was, because I played Bob Marley on the air. This was during apartheid, and I didn't know until the police showed up that I had broke the law. I had to escape South Africa. A radio station called 702 Medium Wave was fighting for its life against apartheid and the BBC of South Africa. They thought if they brought myself and Howard Hessman over, I was the only black person on South African television in 80. Only one that wasn't in handcuffs being arrested. So I was quite popular. It was me and Bob Hope in South Africa. We're there and I'm in a little booth. 5,000 people are surrounding us and we're playing music and I'm doing my Venus thing. Somebody walked in and handed the guy something off the AP wire. And the guy gets it and he says, "Oh my goodness, Tim, you should see this." And I pick it up and it said, "Bob Marley has just gone into a coma." Oh man, I said, "Can I play Bob Marley?" And the guy he said, "Yeah." So I take out my cassette and I shoved it in the machine and I had been listening to it on the plane.
Right.
So wherever I stopped, whatever was playing was going to come out. And out burst one of the most controversial albums, the Zimbabwe album. And the song is "We're the Survivors, the Black Survivors." Now, this is doing apartheid. What they don't want to hear is black people saying they're the survivors.
Right.
When that song hit, 5,000 people, black and white, went crazy, screaming, dancing. The place, and this little bubble we're in is now gyrating and hands in the air, and it was just euphoric. And in comes the manager going, "Stop it, stop it, stop it." And he jumps across the desk, grabs the cassette and rips it out of the machine and rips my tape. And I'm going, "What the hell's," And as we're arguing, he says, "No, you got to get out of here. You got to get out of here. They're coming to get you." I said, "Who's coming to get me? You have just broken the law. They're sending 2 people here now." We're rushing, trying to get to the car. And as the people are crowding, they're going crazy. We finally get towards the end, and there are 2 African police waiting for us.
Did they arrest you?
Well, not then. They were really drunk. I'm not going to say what we say in the streets, but they were, let's say, to the wind.
Yeah.
But they were fans of KRP. The show was one of the most popular show in South Africa. We're not going to arrest Venus, but we know where you sing. We're going to come and get you in the morning. We're going to let you enjoy yourself, but because we love the show and yada. They let us get in the limousine. We went back to the hotel. The impresario, the owner of the station, who brought us over, says, "Listen, be down in the lobby and packed at 4 a.m. They'll get here around 6. And so we were, and we got on a private plane, and we flew to a private area, and we stayed there for a week, and then we snuck out of the country. I got arrested.
That's gangster. That's some gangster shit, man. It's 81 doing that. I love these old stories. I love these old stories. I love these old stories. Okay. Let's go here. Don't be so quick to stun on people. You never know who has what, right? Don't be so quick to stun on people. Let's go.
Oh, and man, shit, you don't be talking that shit on Instagram.
You don't talk shit on
What you talking about?
You talking about funky. Shut up, shitty butt.
Pay attention.
He had to laugh at that one.
Pay attention.
His butt shitty.
But your butt stink. Your butt stink.
What?
Your butt stink.
I can buy your car, you dumb bitch.
Ooh.
Get right.
Yeah.
I can buy your car, you dumb bitch. I can buy your cheap ass Nissan, $1,500 down payment, cheap ass Toyota, but these not made back, so a goddamn Rolls Royce is here. Damn, I can buy the bitch. You dummy. You gotta know who you talking to. You don't know. Everybody got money. That ain't nothing. Have a nice day.
Bye.
Leave the hell alone.
Or what?
Damn, dummy.
Nigga got like $20 in
Somebody
one.
had $20. Don't you see hundreds? Don't you see hundreds? Don't you see hundreds? Don't you see hundreds? You dumb dummy.
Yeah, you dumb dummy. But your butt stink.
Listen, I got I got a Maybach. I got a big truck.
You got your feet, buddy. Your feet. Are you tired? Forrest Gump.
Why?
Oh my God!
He's not on the drop and looking motherfucker.
No,
bum ass looking bitch.
Walk over
Got this freaking prostitute looking ass motherfucker. Freaking prostitute looking motherfucker.
Motherfucker. You prostitute motherfucker.
Wow, that was funny. That was funny. That was funny. Okay. What is this? What is that? Okay. Once again, pit bulls. Y'all see this? Did anyone see this? The horse, not even a horse and buggy is safe.
Hey, come get your dog!
Listen. The horse could have stomped this dog to pace. Even the horse didn't want to, off this dog. But the dog, once again, I know it's the dog. It's never the owner.
It's okay.
Even the dog was holding, even the horse was holding back. Wow. Yeah, if that horse really wanted to end that dog, it could have. Yeah, I know. It's always the owner, never the breed. I know. I get it. Okay, let's go here. What's the beef between Latinos and Argentina? Let's go here. You ready? Most Latin Americans share indigenous European and African ancestry. Spain's colonization was violent. I think the irony tomorrow or next week is Spain versus Argentina. Like that's, I mean, the sheer irony of that, given both of those countries' histories and Europeans and colonization and just how it's almost, it just feels scripted, man. You had a bunch of Argentinians get arrested in Atlanta, get their wake up call, right? But let's continue. Spain's colonization was violent, but unlike the English colonies, it relied more heavily on a racial caste system that placed Europeans at the top while encouraging racial mixing. Many Latin American countries eventually embraced this mixed identity. Argentina became known for rejecting it. They wrote it in their constitution. Okay, so the federal government shall encourage European immigration. After Argentina gained independence from Spain, elites began asking themselves what kind of country they wanted to build. Many believed European immigration was key to the nation's future, so they wrote it in their constitution. Before Argentina could become the European nation its leaders imagined, it first had to take control of indigenous land. In the late 1800s, Argentina launched the conquest of the desert, a military campaign that killed, displaced, and imprisoned indigenous communities across Patagonia. Many historians describe it as a genocide or ethnic cleansing. In 1778, roughly 30% of Buenos Aires was black. By 1887, that number had just fallen at 1.8%. God damn. Holy cow. Historians say it wasn't one event. Afro-Argentines were disproportionately sent to war, devastated by disease, absorbed through interracial marriage, and eventually erased from census records and school textbooks as Argentina reinvented itself as a European nation. For decades, Argentina actively promoted immigration from Europe, offering land, work, and opportunity. More than 6 million Europeans arrived between the late 1800s and mid-1900s. The campaign transformed Argentina's population and helped cement the country's image as the European nation of Latin America. Okay, and of course we know the Nazis showed up. After World War II, Argentina became one of the several countries that provided refugee to Nazi fugitives. It became the most well-known because some of the Holocaust highest-ranking perpetrators settled there, including Adolf Eichmann and Joseph Mengele. Okay, a famous Argentinian saying: Mexicans descended from Aztecs, Peruvians descended from the Incas, Argentines came from the ships. After decades of promoting European immigration, Argentina began presenting itself as European while minimizing its indigenous, African, and mixed ancestry roots. In 2021, Argentine President Alberto Fernandez repeated a version of that century-old idea during a meeting with Spain's Prime Minister. He later apologized after receiving backlash, but then comments showed how deeply that national myth still echoes today. He said the Mexicans came from the Indians, the Brazilians came from the jungle, but we Argentines came from boats from Europe. During the 2022 World Cup, some Argentina supporters were filmed singing racist chants targeting France's black players. The chants resurfaced after the 2024 Copa America, this time sung by Argentina players, prompting a complaint from the French Football Federation and the FIFA investigation. During the 2026 World Cup, live stream footage from iShowSpeed, one of the world's most popular streamers, captured a man in a Argentina jersey making monkey gestures toward him. FIFA condemned the incident and launched an investigation. And it's not because Argentines have European ancestry, it's because Argentina spent generations promoting Europe while minimizing its indigenous African and mixed roots. Whether that perception is fair to every Argentine is another conversation, but the stereotype didn't appear out of nowhere. It has a history. Okay, it is what it is. Yeah, the hell with both of those countries, man. Okay, now let's get into last one. This is pretty good. I like this. I used to buy those cheap sunglasses from the roadside all the time and always thought, what's the point of buying expensive ones? I'm going to lose them anyway. And then one day I gathered the courage and bought an expensive sunglasses. And guess what? I still have them. I've taken care of them ever since. That's when I realized those cheap sunglasses weren't getting lost because they were cheap. they were getting lost because I didn't value them enough to care. It's hard to accept, but sometimes in someone else's story, you are that cheap pair of sunglasses. Pay attention. Pay attention. The moment you are no longer useful to anybody, they will let you go, as they rightfully should. As they rightfully should, because you would do the same. Once someone no longer has value in your life, you remove them. You remove them, replace them. Okay? All right. Okay. Jermaine Dupri suing Sony for royalties. I'm late to this. I know. It's a federal suit filed on Monday, accuses Sony of having not been lawful in its dealings with Dupri dating back to May of 1992. He allegedly began to suspect that he had not been paid in full for royalties in 2023, and that misconduct has been discovered in time since. Jeezy Pete. All right, let's go here.
Basically, Social Def claims that the original statements were wrong, so they tried to recorrect the statements in 2022 to 2023. So basically, Social Def's basically saying like that just shows that the old accounting was wrong. All right. Also, I have written down as far as that they used the wrong royalty rates. So basically, if Jermaine Dupri was supposed to get 8 or 9 or 10 points, for example, they were giving maybe 6, 7 points, or they were just giving a less amount of points on the royalty pay than he was supposed to get contractually. Now, I've been through this before too with a client that I'm not going to mention, but her husband died some years ago. That was a rapper, and in her portal, she was supposed to receive a certain amount of points. I can't really remember, maybe 17 at the time or something like that. But in the portal, she was getting 9, 10 points. It was a lot less of a percent that she was receiving. So we had to audit them, and we worked out the audit and, to get it straightened out. But that's how sloppy it was. That we seen the same issues. I'll just say that.
Okay, that's pretty much it in a nutshell. But he filed in federal court. And yes, the timing is very suspicious after Clive Davis had passed on, because he was at that time running Sony Records. But nonetheless, I hope it works out for him. Okay, now let's go ahead and get to let's go ahead and get to the CIA and the Tartaria content. Get this out the way. So let's go here first. You ready? An oldie but goodie. Let's go here.
Manson, and they used him to change the culture. Manson had been in and out of prison for more than half of his life. He was so institutionalized that he once begged to stay in prison. Then in 1967, the Summer of Love, a 32-year-old Manson found himself in Haight-Ashbury, the epicenter of the hippie movement and ground zero for an MKUltra project headed up by Jolly West, a psychiatrist that specialized in mind control and hypnosis. He also once killed an elephant by shooting it with a dart full of LSD, with the equivalent of 3,000 strong human doses. So of course Jolly was recruited by the CIA to build a fake hippie crash pad to observe and experiment on hippies. They were sourcing their human lab rats from the Haight-Ashbury Free Clinic, somewhere that Charles Manson would frequent. It's believed that he was one of the subjects of experiments centered around LSD-based control, sleep deprivation, and psychological torture. Then Charles Manson spent the next 2 years amassing a cult following using these exact tactics. Manson begins collecting female followers one at a time using LSD-based control. Each new follower helps him recruit the next one. Manson's following would come to be known as the family. One day he takes 20 followers, loads them onto an old school bus, and heads south to Spawn Ranch, just outside of Los Angeles. Now completely isolated, Manson continued dosing them, giving them nightly sermons, and orchestrating group sex. At this time, Manson and the family seemed to operate with complete immunity from the law. In 1969, he was arrested 6 times. Weapons charges, grand theft auto, credit card fraud, and released every time. All this time, Manson was on federal parole, the strictest supervision possible.
Jeez.
Back in San Francisco, his parole officer was Roger Smith, who dropped his caseload from 40 parolees down to 1, just Manson. To make things even weirder, Roger Smith had taken legal guardianship of Charles Manson's son. By now, Manson had stripped away the identity of all of his followers. They hung on his every word, and his ideology became more and more unhinged. The Beatles had just released the White Album, and Manson thought they were sending him coded messages in the music. The helter-skelter ideology was born, a prophecy of an apocalyptic race war, which led to the most infamous string of murders of all time. 8.5-month pregnant movie star Sharon Tate and 4 others were at home when 3 members of the family broke in. Within minutes, they kill everyone inside and write "pig" on the front door in Sharon's blood. The following night, the family goes out to murder again, and this time Manson goes with them. They break into a couple's home and brutally murder them, writing messages on the walls in their blood and even carving the word "war" into one of the victims' stomachs. Manson was arrested a few months later. The theory goes the CIA used Manson and the family to carry out these unspeakable acts. This explains how Manson was able to operate with such leniency from the federal government, and how a barely literate ex-con suddenly mastered mind control. The CIA wanted to use these atrocities to delegitimize the counterculture, and these murders marked the end of the hippie movement. And this is how the CIA...
Yeah, sounds pretty accurate. Jolly West was also Jack Ruby's court-appointed psychiatrist, and he was with them people. That's insane how the 60s, man, everything ties into it to each other. Right? Sharon Tate's husband was Norman Polanski. Okay. CIA created all the popular serial killers of the 20th century. Reed programmed to kill. The politics of serial murder by Dave McGowan. Okay. All right. In addition to Beach Boys drummer Dennis Wilson was friends with Manson, even had Manson live with him for a short time. Dennis and Manson wrote music together. Dennis took Manson to the home of music producer Terry Melcher. Melcher was not impressed with Manson's music and told him he sucked. Manson sought revenge on Melcher. By the time Manson was ready to kill Melcher in his house, Melcher had moved. Manson knew Melcher moved and knew Sharon Tate had moved in. Manson still sent his followers to kill the new owners of the house so as to send a message to the old owner, Terry Melcher. God damn. Holy cow. Jeffrey Dahmer had the same thing going on. Check out the book. Okay. Operation Chaos to dismantle the hippie movement. COINTELPRO is Black Revolutionary Movement. Yeah. Okay. Let's go here. I mean, regardless of who the actual leader was, it would be completely incorrect to call Manson a hippie, though he was completely painted that way, and he was done so because this was obviously a character assassination of the Summer of Love, and it did basically end that. You look at what that employee from the free clinic said. He recalled Manson coming in before all this happened with 2 women on his arms, and he just hit one of them and they made him leave. He was not hiding. Yet by then, so many Americans had fled to Hyde-Ashbury. It was common knowledge, as reported by the people that actually lived in San Francisco, that they could no longer let their pets, their cats, be outdoor animals because they were constantly disappearing, and it was found that all the homeless hippies that had just become addicts were trapping them and eating them. Jeez. You have to wonder why cults are so popular in the U.S., LSD or not, because we are naturally led people. There we go. Okay, everyone thinks because they get a basic education they actually know anything. Then they go out in the real life and end up prime candidates for cults because they do not have critical thinking skills or really any means to consider actions for themselves. You see it in the current conflicts. We literally have a foreign government occupying our blah 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 blah. Okay. You forgot the part where Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys stole his songs. And don't forget Doris Day's son, Terry Melcher, plus Angela Lansbury moved her kids out of the U.S. to get away from Manson and drug culture. Her daughter had dated Manson. What the hell? Wow. Listen, it goes back to Jim Morrison, his dad, the Navy Admiral. It just... Oh man, I did a breakdown of that shit years ago, man. The whole tie-in with the the 60s and the hippies and the CIA. Man, I don't forget half that shit I done talked about. But yeah, man. Yeah. Okay. Wow. But he won't tell nobody else they suck. Okay, now let's get to Tartaria. I've been talking about it for too long. We're gonna get into it. Finally. We're gonna burn through it as quickly as we can. Not too quick, but quick enough. You know what I'm saying? So, let's see, 2 hours, 1 hour. Okay. Let's go here. You ready? All right, let's go.
Within the archives of the American Central Intelligence Agency, known worldwide as the CIA, lay hidden a classified document which mentions a country whose name has become but a myth. The mere mention of Tartaria invites a kaleidoscope of perspectives. Some theorists suggest a civilization harnessing free energy, a secret guarded by the hands of power, a realm where ancient Tartarians harness boundless energy concealed from the world for generations. Yet skepticism still echoes. Free energy from a lost civilization, a fantastical conspiracy, or a concealed truth. For some, Tartaria remains elusive, a phantom civilization absent from historical records. But what if Tartaria transcends myth? Some propose it as the medieval name for the Mongol Empire, a reinterpretation that adds a new layer to our understanding of a bygone era, challenging the annals of history and accepted academia. However, one thing can be certain. Tartaria was clearly mentioned in this CIA document. This document, titled National Cultural Development Under Communism, was first published in June of 1957 and was immediately classified. It was approved for release on the 24th of August, 1999. It starts with a proclamation issued on the 7th of December 1917 by the Bolsheviks. It reads, Muslims of Russia, Tatars of the Volga and the Crimea, Kyrgyz and Sarts of Siberia and Turkestan, Turks and Tatars of Transcaucasia, Chechens and mountain peoples of the Caucasus, and all you whose mosques and prayer houses have been destroyed, whose beliefs and customs have been trampled upon by the Tsars and the oppressors of Russia. Henceforth, your beliefs and customs, your national and cultural institutions are forever free and inviolate. Organize your national life in complete freedom. This is your right. The Bolsheviks had realized that if their revolution was to be a complete success, and if they were to be able to consolidate their newly won power, the support of Russia's minority peoples, including the Muslims, was essential. As well as this, Lenin and Stalin promised equality and sovereignty of all nations of Russia, the right of nations to free self-determination, including the right to secede and form independent states, abolition of all national and national religious privileges and restrictions whatsoever, and freedom of development for the national minorities and ethnographic groups inhabiting the territory of Russia. Unfortunately, for the many peoples of Russia, they had no idea just how little the Bolshevik promises actually meant. This document further alludes to the many ways in which the communists then suppressed the Muslims and other minorities and minority religious groups within Russia. The history of the communists during the 40 years they have been in power in the Soviet Union shows that self-determination has not been the only subject on which they...
Okay, throughout their years of power, and especially since World War II and their propaganda to the peoples of Asia and Africa, the communists have boasted of their success in solving the nationalities problem by building a multinational state in which every nationality is equal and has full opportunity for free national cultural development. A brief examination of the record, however, shows that the permitted opportunity for national cultural development is severely limited where it exists at all, and is in any case without exception so controlled and warped as to serve not the needs and aspirations of the various peoples, but only the interests of the Communist Party and the great Russian chauvinism. Wow.
They've betrayed both their promises and their alleged doctrine. In the Muslim regions of Russia, Islam was the hearthstone around which the life of its devotees revolved, or rather, did revolve, until the communists violated their promises and made it impossible for Muslims to perform their religious duties. As we've seen, the November 1917 proclamation promised Muslims that they would be free to continue in practice of their faith. A decree on the separation of church from state issued on the 5th of February 1918 declared in Article 3 that every citizen may profess any religion or none. In Article 5 that free practice of religious rights is guaranteed, and in Article 9 that citizens may teach and study religion privately. Once the communists had consolidated their power, they began to reveal their true nature, to violate their earlier promises and to take repressive acts. Lands belonging to mosques were confiscated by a decree in 1918. Muslim religious brotherhoods were outlawed during the period 1921 to 1922, and a campaign was launched to ridicule Islam and to undermine the influence of the spiritual leaders of the Muslim people. In 1929, measures were enacted that made the active religious life of Islamic worshippers virtually impossible. Islamic leadership was eliminated by the arrest and deportation, if not liquidation, of almost all persons enjoying any religious status. Nearly all village and most city mosques were closed. Religious literature was suppressed through the changing of alphabets, the confiscation of existing religious texts, including the Quran, and the suppression of all publications of a religious nature, and anyone in a responsible position was dismissed if known to be a pious and practicing Muslim. Muslims were to be free to practice their beliefs and customs. That was the Bolshevik promise. In 1917, when the communists came to power, there were 7,000 mosques in European Russia alone, in addition to the unnumbered thousands in Muslim Central Asia, the Caucasus, and Transcaucasia, as well as the Crimea. But in 1942, the communists themselves admitted that there were then only 1,312 mosques in the whole of the Soviet Union. The others had been confiscated and converted into warehouses or stores, or otherwise desecrated or allowed to fall into ruin. In Tashkent, for example, where once 300 mosques graced the city before the communists came to power, there were only 20 left.
Now you understand when you see all the Dagestan, Turkestan, and Kazakhstan fighters from those regions. They're deeply Muslim, devout Muslims.
Samarkand, which formerly had over 100 and was the seat of Tamerlane's Tartarian Empire, had only 17 left, of which only one was permitted to be used. Bukhara, an independent Tartarian city which once boasted of 360 mosques, was also reduced to just one. Alma-Ata, a Muslim town for centuries and the capital of the Muslim Republic of Kazakhstan, had not left one single mosque, nor any to be found in large Muslim centers such as Krasnovodsk, Ashgabat, or Stalinabad. The fact was that the communists condemned and therefore prevented the publication of all Muslim literary works except those few which extol the virtues of Russia and the Russians. The document then goes on to mention Tartaria. Or, let us take the matter of history, which along with religion, language and literature constitute the core of a people's cultural heritage. Here again, the communists have interfered in a shameless manner. For example, on the 9th of August 1944, the Central Committee of the Communist Party, sitting in Moscow, issued a directive ordering the party's Tartar Provincial Committee
directive ordering the party's Tartar Provincial Committee to proceed to a scientific revision of the history of Tartaria. Oh, wow. To liquidate serious shortcomings and mistakes of a nationalistic character committed by individual writers and historians in dealing with the Tartar history. In other words, Tartar history was to be rewritten. Let us be frank, was to be falsified in order to eliminate references, Great Russian aggressions, and to hide the facts of the real. Wow, that's crazy.
To proceed to a scientific revision of the history of Tartaria, to liquidate serious shortcomings and mistakes of a nationalistic character committed by individual writers and historians in dealing with Tartar history. In other words, Tartar history was to be rewritten. Let us be frank, was to be falsified, in order to eliminate references to Great Russian aggressions and to hide the facts of the real course of Tartar-Russian relations. And this was no isolated case. In every Muslim area within the USSR, historians, on orders of the Communist Party, have rewritten history to distort the facts so that the Russians appear always in a good light. Needless to say, histories which present the facts truthfully have been withdrawn and destroyed, so that the present and future generations of Muslims are forever denied the chance of learning the true facts of their nation's past. So in this document, the writer, discussing historical events, has expressed concern about the interference of communists, particularly the Communist Party in the USSR, in shaping the narrative of history. The writer cites a specific instance in 1944 when the Communist Party directed a revision of Tartarian history to eliminate references to Russian aggression, suggesting a deliberate falsification of historical facts. The writer contends that this manipulation of history extends beyond Tartaria to all Muslim areas within the USSR, with the intent to portray Russians favorably. Additionally, the writer notes that truthful historical accounts have been withdrawn and destroyed, preventing present and future generations of Muslims and Tartars alike from learning the genuine facts about their nation's past. It is also extremely important to note how vital such a document like this is to be naming Tartaria as a country in the 1950s. The speaker highlights a pattern of interference by the Communist Party and the Russians in shaping the historical narrative, particularly in Muslim and Tartar areas within the USSR. The directive to revise Tartarian history and eliminate references to Russian aggression suggests a deliberate effort to manipulate historical facts. The broader assertion is that this trend extends beyond Tartaria, with historians rewriting history to portray Russians in a positive manner. This document emphasizes the removal and destruction of truthful historical accounts, denying present and future generations the opportunity to learn the genuine facts about our world's history. As we reflect on these concerns, it raises questions about the impact of such historical manipulation on cultural heritage and the understanding of complex relationships between different communities. The deliberate alteration of historical narrative poses challenges to the pursuit of truth and the preservation of diverse cultural identities. This message underscores the importance of critical examination and preservation of authentic historical records to ensure a comprehensive understanding of the past for generations to come. So this book that we're going to be having a look at, A Most Complete Compendium of Geography, it was released by Lawrence Icard in 1691, this original from the British Library. So this book in itself contains a lot of information that you can find elsewhere. There are other documents that have exactly the same stuff. This is an example of that. From 1715, A New Description of the World, delineating Europe, Africa, Asia, and America. And there's many more. So I just searched for one of the words, which is another word for Uzbek or Zagatay, and you can find all these different books that have references to exactly the same geography stuff. So they've all copied from the same sources. They do have slight differences. So an example would be from this one. We'll see that it talks about the 85th degree. And if we come over to this book here, the one that we're going to be reading from, it says the 83rd and 180th degree, whereas the other one was 85th and 182nd. 85th and 182nd. Between the same latitude, 39th and 72nd. But we're going to be talking about this, so you can check these documents out for yourself, see what you think. But we're going to be going over this first document, just going to be seeing what it's saying, having a look on the map where that would be. So, Tartary is the greatest country in the world, lying on the east of Russia and the north of Persia, India, and China. Situated between the 83rd and the 180th degree of longitude and between the 39th and 72nd degree of latitude, being in length from the borders of Astrakhan to the eastern parts of Cathay, about 4,000 miles, and the breadth from the southern parts of...
Okay, so that's its original size. It's crazy.
Moranara, which is Zagathay or Uzbek, to the most northern part of Tartaria Deserta, which is essentially the name for Siberia, which is about 2,000 miles. This contains the ancient provinces of Scythia, Sake, Sogdania, and the greatest part of Sarmatia Asiatica, with a little of old Persia. It has remained unconquered under several governments until anno 1162. The Tartars, an obscure people, overran this country and elected a monarchy, which still remains. But a good part of it has fallen away. So again, this document was written in 1690. So in 1690, the Tartars still have their monarchy in Tartary, but most of it has fallen away. So that makes sense because in our other videos, we've gone over the Russian or Muscovite conquest of the Tartaria areas. The emperor is called the Great Sham of Tartary, who is also the famous country of China. So it's saying that the Tartars own China in 1691. That would make sense. We know the Tartars retook China in the 1600s. 1644, they officially became the rulers with the Qing dynasty. The Ming dynasty beforehand were having issues. There was a peasants' revolt in Beijing, and at that point, the Mings asked the kings, or the Qings, to come and assist them, and that's when the Qing dynasty moved in. So going back to the document, the emperor is called the Great Sham of Tartary, who has also the famous country of China. Some part of it is under the Russians, the rest under several independent princes. The imperial seat is at Shambalu, as it is supposed. So this is important because Shambalu, we're going to have a look, as a lot of references to it being Peking, but it's not Peking, it's a different city. We'll see some references for that, just a peek. Or Dardu of Wan, which was the winter capital of the Wan dynasty in now Beijing, the capital of China, is the Kambalu. An alternative form of Kambaluk comes from Marco Polo's travels, but it's not just Marco Polo's, other people that talk about it. Marco Polo is the one they like to reference the most, and he apparently visited Khanbalik, which in East Turkish means city of the Khan, which, as we saw, is supposedly Khanbalik in Beijing. We can easily disprove this one. All we have to do is have a look where Beijing is, and we can see Beijing right here is behind the Great Wall of China. So this is where Beijing is, and Beijing was apparently conquered by Kublai Khan, and he supposedly called it Kambaluk, which was its name forever afterwards. However, if we come to this book called The History of Tamerlane the Great, taken out of Alicent, the Emperor's Historian, so this is by his historian himself. This book was printed in 1679. It seems to have been translated, original documents, probably around the 1600s. And Timur is from 1336 to 1405. So we can see from this book, just from the table of contents, some of the things that Tamerlane does. He has a war with the Muscovites, has a war against the King of China. But before he can have a war against the King of China, he is stopped by the revolt of Acalix, a great lord of Tartary. So this is before he goes against the King of China. And here it talks on page 35 Calix had been with his army of 100,000 men before the great and proud city of Kambalu, the metropolis of the province of Kate. The inhabitants had opened their gates and received him with as much joy as if he had been their lawful sovereign. However, Tamerlane, who comes from...
They were so blind and foolish as to send some of their own citizens with the deputies who the rebel had dispatched to the court and held them. They had orders in his name to assure the emperor of his obedience and fidelity. Studied... Wow, okay. They beseech his majesty to substitute in his place Calix, that their glorious empire might not be enslaved to a stranger.
Zagate or Chagate, which is to the west. He comes and he fights Calix and he takes Kambalu. And this book talks more about it, you can see. 14 mentions of Kambalu. And this is before he invades China. So let's have a look at the invasion of China. And as soon as it begins, it says the provinces of Liaotum and of Pekin. Pekin, of course, is Beijing, which the Chinese had taken from the Tartarians, were the causes of that anger and displeasure, which they could not dissemble. So of course Pekin had been taken from them in the terms of Kublai Khan had taken it himself, or built it himself as Khan Balik, not Kambalu. These are different places. He built Khan Balik, but the Chinese had taken it back with the Ming dynasty, and Tamerlane was trying to re-establish the one dynasty, the Tartars, which the Chinese had taken from the Tartarians, were the causes of that anger and displeasure, which they could not disassemble. They found themselves by this means, and by a prodigious wall of a vast length, built in the passage of the mountains, deprived of the benefit of that prey which they were wont to make in that kingdom by their frequent inroads. So it's talking about the Great Wall of China. Pekin, Beijing in the Great Wall of China. So a simple deduction. How did Tamerlane manage to capture Kambaluk or Kambalu from Calix to then move south across the wall to then capture Kambalu again? If it's Pekin, if it's Beijing. If this is right, if the claims that Wikipedia made, or the official narrative makes, an example is here. You can see that from the travels of Marco Polo on this Khan Academy, when they quote this point, in this city of Kambalu, another spelling for Khan Balik. You'll find this in all the old books as well. They've, not the originals, obviously, but in the more recent translations, it'll say down below, Kambalu is just Khan Balik, it just means Beijing. So if we come to the third chapter, the one before this, where it talks about Calix, you can see there are two mentions of a wall. However, those mentions of the wall, when Tamerlane had privately made mentions for preparations for an expedition that he'd promised his uncle, the uncle being the emperor, he'd promised this expedition. So basically, Tamerlane says to his uncle that he's going to go and attack China. The king of this large country, who's named the offspring of the sun, expected no such matter. And you see, when talking of China, these lands are lying beyond a river called Tachi, and beyond that famous wall which bound both empires, and which the king of China built to secure himself and his people from the Tartarians. The next mention of the wall, nevertheless, he was willing that Calix should believe that he was passed beyond the mountains to assault the famous wall defended by all the armies of the Chineses. So it's saying Tamerlane wanted Calix to believe that he was already beyond the mountains and he was attacking the Chinese at the wall. So he's talking about the Chinese at the wall, right here. If Calix was at Kambalu, which is the metropolis of the province of Cathay, if Calix is at Kambalu, how the hell is Kambalu also Peking? Because Tamerlane hasn't even gone there yet, and they talk about the wall. The only mentions of the wall, which is pretty easy to understand, but so I hope I've explained it decently well, but just have a look. If this is Beijing, all right, and we're somewhere outside Beijing, and they're telling us that Beijing is Kambalu, it's the same place. So this Tartarian king is apparently living in Beijing, in exactly the same place as the Emperor of China. No problems, they're not arguing or anything. They apparently both live in the same city and don't understand it. So Tamerlane wants to cross this wall to take over Beijing. And on the way to take over Beijing, somebody revolts. Now history is trying to tell us that Beijing and Kambalu are the same place. So Kanbalik and Kambalu are the same place. That's what they're trying to say. So with that in mind, Tamerlane is on his way to attack Beijing when he gets a revolt. He gets word that Calix has revolted and has taken Kambalu. So isn't that Beijing? So surely he's just heard that Calix has taken Kambalu. So he then goes and he goes, right, we're not attacking Beijing anymore. We're going to go and attack Kambalu, which is Beijing apparently. So then he goes and attacks Kambalu, beats Calix at Kambalu, which is Beijing, and then he leaves Beijing going, good job lads, now let's go attack Beijing. It doesn't make sense, does it? And then in the very next chapter, he mentions the wall 33 times because he's coming over the fucking wall. That's why he's mentioned it 33 times, because he's got to get over the wall. The page is dedicated to how they get round the wall. On page 60, it says, as he was nearest to the enemy, he had an opportunity to discover in what places the wall that stopped the Tartarian inroads might be assaulted. So on page 60, he's talking about what places on this wall he would be able to attack.
He has sent some spies into China by secret and by ways in the mountains that are at the passage. From there, he understood it all happened there, but his prudence had succeeded chiefly in winning by his insinuations one of the greatest lords of the mountains, named the Lord of... Okay, this lord was displeased with the passages of the Chinese and Tartarians over his ground and or rather, he had been one with the picture of the prince of. Okay. I see what you're saying.
Get through. They found a local prince who took liking to them, and he betrayed the Chinese and divulged a secret passage that he knew that led into China. And it was easy to go in and surprise the soldiers that were guarding the wall. So again, why would he have to do this if he's already taken Kambalu? That doesn't make sense. None of that makes sense. So I've just spent quite a while on this because I need to hammer home that Kambalu and Beijing are not the same place. And this is obvious. This is obvious that they're not the same place. You'd have to be a moron to think they're the same place, because all the mentions of the wall are when he attacks Pekin. We saw him mention Pekin up here, Liutum and of Pekin. So why is he calling it Pekin if it's also Kambalu? Why is he confused? Why doesn't he realise that Calix is already at this place? Why doesn't he realise that he's had to cross a wall? Why is he worried about attacking the same wall if he's already crossed it so easily? He crossed it so easily apparently he didn't even notice the first time. That doesn't make sense. So, Kambalu and Khan Balik are two very different places. Khan Balik is Beijing, yes, as in Khan Balik. Kambalu, that's a different place entirely. On page 108, all things having been thus ordered, the army took the way to Kambalu. But before they began to march, the prince sent to the emperor, his uncle, to inform him of his happy successes and return. So he's returning to Kambalu. The army in their return homewards carried with them all their sick people, and after 2 days' march, they met with the new recruits that were coming to assist them. The prince ordered them to proceed on no further, but to return home towards Kambalu, whither he intended to go and meet with the emperor, who had intended to see him there and give him a triumphing reception. So the emperor, who is Tamerlane's uncle, is meeting him at Kambalu. So, and he's saying, return home towards Kambalu. Go back, go to Kambalu. Don't worry, we're leaving China. We're going home. We're going to go see the emperor in Kambalu. So again, how can Kambalu and Pekin be the same place? They're not. That's where history's lying. They've made a very big effort. I don't know who exactly, whether it was the Chinese, whether it's the Jesuits, the Russians, but they made a very big effort to lie about the location of Kambalu, because it was definitely north of the Wall of China. Because if it was south of the Wall of China, then it wouldn't make sense. If Kambalu was south of the Wall of China, then Tamerlane never would have had to bother.
Okay, I get what he's saying. He's spending too much time on it for me. I get it. I agree with him. Okay, let's go.
The reason that's out in the ocean is because, obviously, north to south, they're trying to get every bit in. But they did a very good job when you consider 1690. They got this is the top one here. That will be the one in the ocean. This one here, down in the middle of the desert. And obviously it goes all the way up to the northern border. So these are the coordinates that were given in that book. And this is the area that it says is Tartary.
Oh shit, that's big. That's big. That's like Atlanta's big. That's pretty fucking big.
It says that it's on the east of Russia. So obviously Russia over here. But this is where it does get a little bit confusing, because Russia was owning big chunks of this at this point, and they were moving in this way. And as well, by 1690, the Russians had conquered all the way up to here. So 1690, the Russians had actually conquered all of this. So Tartaria and its exact location around about the time of this document is very debatable, because in 1689, we had the Treaty of Nechinsk, which saw Russia take all the land up to this border here, which was the Amur River, and they got everything on this side. And the Tartars, the Qing dynasty, they were in here. So that gives us more evidence that Kambalu was probably somewhere around here in the Manchuria area, or possibly around here somewhere, but definitely around here. Now, if we take the 4,000 miles it gave from Astrakhan, because Astrakhan was part of the Tartarian area, so this is Tartaria Minor in Ukraine. This is the original Tartarian areas around Kazan, because this is actually where you'll find the Republic of Tatarstan, also known as Tartaria, right there. He's trying to take us over to the one in Romania. Yeah, that's another thing with the Tartarian tablets. Look at that another day. But you've got the Republic of Tatarstan. This area was officially known as Tartaria, without the R, the Tartaria. So from Astrakhan all the way up to the borders of Cathay, which is here, and we'll discuss Cathay as well briefly. Cathay is another thing that's been twisted. So Cathay, they'll tell you, is North China, and the Manji is South China. So as Wikipedia will tell us, Cathay is a historical name for China that was used in Europe. During the early modern period, the term Cathay initially evolved as a term referring to what is now northern China, completely separate and distinct from China, which was a reference to southern China. So they try and say that it's North China and South China, but it's a little bit more than that. The Cathay region is the area beyond the Great Wall, so it's the area north of the Great Wall. Everywhere south of the Great Wall is the Manji. They're the Chinese. So, and well, there's a debate on Manji becoming Manchurians, so there is that. But Manji is the south of the wall, and Cathay is north. We'll have a look at some of the pictures, and you'll see
This one's interesting, by the way. I won't talk about it, but it's got Antichrist and Gog Magog here. It's flipped upside down, so this is north. But we'll have a look, for example, on... Well, this map is a 1570 map. It's not a great one. China's down here. Cathay is here. So it's a little bit... That will be more north, because obviously follow the curvature that is added on. So from China, that is actually north. Then you can see on this map, you've got a similar thing. This says Manji down here, and the Cathay region up here. So we'll find one with a wall, because the wall is... Here we go. So that... We can see up here, China is listed as China, and this is the Great Wall here following the mountains, and Cathay is north of the Great Wall. Now this is important because we have Peking down south of the Great Wall. So Peking is right here, and up here is actually where we have Kambalu. So that's quite hard to see, but that's Kambalu up there. Poor image. I could get a better one up. I probably should do. Go on, just for you. There we go, so we've got a better quality version, and you can see the Great Wall right here. So actually this one looks a little bit different. But yeah, so you've got the Great Wall right here. Peking would obviously be down here. And on the north of the Great Wall is where you'll find Kambalu and Kambalu River and stuff like that. I don't care. Thank you. Right, Kambalu would be there. It's definitely north of the Great Wall. And of course, that's how it describes it, because Tamerlane, he goes to Cathay, where Kambalu is in Cathay, and then he has to go to China, and he has to jump the wall. So evidently... Kambalu is north of the wall. Now, back to the document. It says it has remained unconquered under several governments until 1162. So we did read that. The imperial seat is at Shambalu. So yes, of course. Is this talking about Kambalik in Beijing, or is it talking about somewhere north of the wall in Cathay? That's for you to decide, but hopefully I've convinced you. The inhabitants are Mohammedans, pagans, some Christians, and the Nestorian sect. And it also talks about their language. So the language is the Tartarian language, very boisterous and clamorous, almost the same with the Turkish, having some mixture of Persian and Scythian words. In some places they use the Persian tongue. Now that talks about their chief commodities, what they sell, and it also breaks up Tartaria into 5 great parts. Tartaria Deserta, which is the most western province bordering on Russia, and it's divided into the Kalmuki butchers or the Olgarians, the Chazag or the Kashgars, and the Karakathays or the Shamshalites. And the 2 main cities or the capital cities are Sharkan and Kumbalik. So, or it does say the capital city of the whole, or the main city of the whole, is Sharkan or Karkan, however you want to say that. So you've got Karkan and Kumbalik. Notice how that is very similar to Kambalu. It's probably the same meaning. Kumbalik, Khanbalik, city of the Sham or city of the Khan. So it does seem that this name is something that moves around as well. Because obviously if you've just set up a new kingdom and you build a new city, you say, ah, this is my city. The city of me. City of the Sham. So Kumbalik, Khanbalik, Kambalu. So yeah, the second part is Uzbek or Zagathay on the south of Tartaria Deserta. It's about 1,200 miles long, and it contains the old provinces of Sakai, Sogdania, and part of Scythia and Old Persia. So this is the bit that, as we know, was called Independent Tartary for a while, until the Russians finally invaded that. The capital cities are Samarkand, which is where Tamerlane is supposedly from, Bukhara, and Istigius, which I've never heard of that one. It's probably got a different name, which I have heard of. There's also the provinces of Belch, Alfoid, or Alsoid, Khwarazm, Alshar, and Targana. The third part of Tartaria is Turkestan, which is part of ancient Scythia, and it's on the east of Zagathay, about 1,400 miles long. The capital cities or capital towns are Tibet, Kaskar, and Khotan. It contains many kingdoms as Kaskar, Chialis or Turfan, Chiatium, Khotam, Tibet, Kamul, Lop, Tainsu, Kaindu, and others. The Lop, of course, can be located today, the Lop Desert, so there would have been the Kingdom of Lop in the Lop Desert, so that does give you an idea that these are the right places. Turkestan on the east of independent Tartary. Tartaria Deserta, as it's known, is north of that. So it's very interesting that they call that the desert, considering I would argue that the Lop is the desert, but... Now, the fourth section is called Mongol or Magog, the true old Tartary. It's on the north of Turkestan, about 80...
Alright, so Gog and Magog, that's biblical references, okay.
1,800 miles long and 950 in breadth. The chief towns are Mongol and Tenduk. It contains many provinces as Sumogul or Tartar, Tenduk or Mekrat, Baju or Mekrit, Tekmogul, Kali, and others. So Mongol or Magog is north of Turkestan, which does seem to match with Mongolia and areas to the east. And then finally, we have Cathay or Kin Tartary on the southeast of Mongol, about 1,650 miles long and 1,100 miles in breadth. It contains 4 great provinces: Cathay or Nayman, Kambalu or Arab Kambalik, Nish or Tenduk, and Yupi.
It contains the ancient Serica and parts of Scythia. I'll bring us back to another map because on Wikipedia they're obviously talking about how Cathay is China, is exactly the same as China. But anyway, so you can kind of sense the passive aggressiveness with the Cathay is finally gone. This 1689 map by Giacomo Cantelli da Vignola from Modena identifies it and Manji with China. So now if we zoom in on this, we can see Peking and Liaotung. So those are the places that were mentioned as where Tamerlane was about to go and invade, until he got word that Calix, one of the kings of Tartary, had decided to take over Kambalu. Now, Kambalu isn't shown on this map, but it's usually shown as being either near the Sungari or Quentung Fluvius. So it's still in this region. So even though Cathay has gone, it's still here. It's not China. It's still south of the wall. I mean, it became China, as in they invaded China. So it's one of these things where it's a confusion, but they've also purposely tried to do it. Now, you'll notice over here is the Yupi that was just mentioned, the Tartari de Yupi. So we just heard about the Yupi people, and they're over here on the right. So this is the Chinese south of this wall. We can have a look at this picture. This picture from just before, which shows us Cathay up here, Kambalu right here on this river, which is called the River Pulisanja on this map. So we can see that Kambalu is right here, and it's outside the wall, a wall of 400 leagues betwixt the banks of hills, built by the kings of China against the breakings in of the Tartars. Kingdom of the Great Sham, and it's north of the walls. Cathay, it's north of the walls, it's northeast. So it's very easy to work out once you realize that. And you can see the map.
Okay, let me jump around a little bit. Let's jump around a little bit.
Known as the Nanai people. And they lived along the Amma River, and they were actually evacuated by the Chinese originally. So the Amma River is, of course, this one that we saw over here. This makes this border. So this river, it comes from up there, down there, around there. So these people are from here. And on this map that I got from Rare Maps, the date on this, it's from Stockholm, London, 1730. So the reason we come to this one, obviously we can see down here the Great Wall of China peeking there. And if we come up, we can see our Amma River. Now it does have a different flow. It comes right from the side instead of coming from up. So that could just be a mapping issue there. Or maybe it did actually flow a bit differently a few hundred years ago. But we can see UP Tartaros down here. So that matches that map that we just saw, which is up here, Tartary to UP. So the UP is around this corner. Cathay is right here, just beyond this wall. So have a look at the wall. Cathay, the UPs are going to be up here. So having a look at this here, again, we've got the Great Wall of China around here, the UPs around here. So where do we think Cathay is going to be? Around here somewhere, isn't it? This will be the Cathay region. So we can assume that Kambalu, the proper Kambalu, not Kambalik, proper Kambalu, was around here somewhere, with the Christian kingdom till for only 60 years. Supposedly set up by Prester John, or maybe even Didymus Thomas himself, although I think if it was Didymus Thomas, he'd be about 1,200 years late.
Okay. The geography is cool. I kind of want to get into the actual, all the technological stuff. Tartaria hand. Let's continue. Let's jump around a bit. Okay,
For collecting money from everyone. Sometimes battles would happen and everyone would go, I'm not paying anymore, and then the emperor can't do anything about it, so more places say, well, I'm not going to pay either, and then within 50 years nobody's paying anything, and then they'll get a reunification where someone like Genghis Khan comes along and he says, right, I'm sorting this shit out, and he goes around and beats everyone and starts collecting money again, rinse and repeat. So that's basically what's happened. And then they lost out to Russia. They lost out to Russia in the 15 to 16, 1700s. And eventually, they were trapped in China and independent Tartary. And they were slowly beaten in the independent Tartary wars around here by Russia. And they were slowly beaten by the British, the French, and the Russians with the Opium Wars. So this kingdom went from controlling everything in about 1500, 1530 maybe, controlling essentially everything, to being wiped out by about the 1900s.
All right, here we go.
When it comes to Tartaria, this is definitely the most difficult place to find information about. If you look on YouTube or other blogs and forums, Stolen History, I think most people will probably focus on the idea of buildings in America being older than they seem. Settlements and cities growing to have huge populations much faster than they should have done. Some people even suggest that things like the railroads were actually dug out instead of built, things like this. We're not going to be touching on any of that stuff. As you know, on this channel, we try to focus on what we can find in the historical data. We don't really try to touch too much on speculation or things that we can't find evidence for. Doesn't mean it didn't happen. Doesn't mean it did happen.
Okay, so this one says Tesla stole the tech. Where did they go? Tesla stole tech from ancient free energy tech even before this. Okay.
Doesn't mean it didn't happen. Doesn't mean it did happen. It's just
not what we do here.
We don't do that here.
We look for things that we can actually find evidence for, and then we talk about that. If you want to speculate on what might have happened as a result, or the consequences, then that's up to you. But we talk about what we can find, and this is something that, like I say, I have avoided for quite a while, because the information out there is just so little, and I didn't want to provide something to you guys that was fantastical without being able to back any of it up. So, for example, on Stolen History, on their main article about Tartaria that was posted a good few years ago now, I think about 2020, one of my first videos was actually on this, but I ended up deleting it because at the time I really didn't have much knowledge on Tartaria, so I ended up deleting it because they do make a lot of mistakes in this, I must be honest. They do sometimes give you some good information, don't get me wrong, and definitely good sources and links. But yeah, anyway, so coming from Stolen History, this was their biggest article about Tartaria, and they made the claim in this map of 1652 that Tartary appears to have control over North America. And I'm not 100% sure on what the basis for that claim actually is. I've brought up the high quality of the map. I think the reason that they're suggesting that it's controlled by Tartary is because it's the same colour, which is kind of ridiculous, because as we see, Europe is one colour, South America is the same colour, so are they trying to suggest that Europe and South America are the same team? I'm not really sure. Africa is obviously one colour as well, so is the African continent a whole country? No. I think the whole reason that they're saying that it's part of Tartary is actually because it's coloured yellow and so is Tartary, although if you see the corner of Tartary here, it's green. If that is the reason, that's pretty stupid, gonna be honest, because these two are the same colour, and they're definitely not one giant country. Africa isn't one giant country. We do see over here that we have some text written about America. So looking around, a lot of named places, but there's nothing that indicates any cities down there or anything. Over here as well, I'm not going to translate the whole thing, but it basically just talks about Columbus discovering it and then other people doing it afterwards. But notice that the date is actually 100 years incorrect, because Columbus discovered America in 1492. Rather curious, isn't it? They seem to make that mistake. Got it out by a whole 100 years. Going back to Stolen History, don't worry, by the way, I will be showing you some decent evidence that could suggest that these things are different. Just going through this first. And then the other thing that they mention on American Tartary is, they do say the jury is still out on this, but there are some indicators that Tartary was present in the North American continent as well. There obviously are no official historical accounts, but some bits and pieces of info suggest just that. You know, it goes against what they said before about that map seemingly showing the whole of North America being under Tartarian control, because it's just kind of ridiculous. But we're going to talk about the reality of it, because that's a bit of a nutcase claim, but we're going to talk about the reality. So the main things that they go off is this person that you may or may not have heard of called King Tartarax. And then there's also this map here, and it provides this source here from this book for the text. I wanted to see the map, because the map and the text are separate. He's just stuck the text over, and he hasn't provided a source for the map. So what we'll do is we'll have a look at that text itself. And this book is by Uzziah Priest from 1834. It's called American Antiquities and Discovery. We're going to come back to this book shortly, because there's something else that connects with it that I want to bring up first, because this goes into detail on that. So first we're going to have a look at a map. And whilst it's not quite the same, we can see with this one that we're trying to find that's got pink on this side, the green here and the yellow down here, and Hispania Nova. It's a similar thing. Hispania Nova here, you can see this area here. So maybe it's trying to suggest that this area is its own region. I think they're trying to suggest that this is Tartaria, and then obviously the Spanish come down here and the Europeans have come over from this side. So I think that's what they're trying to suggest, is that this is Tartarian. This map as well has a very similar thing going on about it. Once again, 1492, so they've got it correct on this map. But you can see that they've got this place called Quivera, which is connected to Tartarax, which we're going to talk about shortly. But yeah, it is, again, similar thing. Hispania Nova, this side here where we think the Europeans have come in, and then this, which is what they're suggesting, is the Tartarian sections. So it definitely wasn't control over the whole North American region. I think, if anything, it will have been the West Coast. It is actually important to remember that
That's bigger than the West Coast, because then this has to be Lake Michigan. So this is Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Iowa, Nebraska, and then you go down, and then Illinois, Missouri, and then Kentucky, Tennessee, and then, okay, so you got the East Coast. That's a funky looking map. But if it's going off what it looks like, okay, it's Latin America. This is the southern states, because that's what we Florida. This is a very messed up drawn map. This is definitely the East Coast, right? That's definitely Lake Michigan. Okay, let's continue.
The main migrations of Native Americans are actually from Asia. The thing is, though, the official history will tell you, looking at this haplogroup map here, that they came over 10,000 years ago, 20,000 years ago, 30,000 years ago. I think the most recent ones they'll say is about 4,000 or 5,000 years ago, but anything after that, they say it didn't happen, which is curious. Why were people able to cross these oceans 5,000 years ago, but they weren't able to do it 1,000 years ago? The original idea behind it is the frozen land bridge theory, that they were able to cross over the Bering Strait and then move south from there. Then you've also got them sailing around these islands up to Kamchatka, and then going across that way. But then it also can fit in with the land bridge theory because of the lower water levels are 150 meters lower at one point. But then we have this one down here, which is evidently a water crossing, and they admit that 5,000 years ago people did cross over to America on boats. So King Tartarax essentially comes from this story to do with our Spanish adventurers that were looking for gold. This man here, Francisco Vasquez de Coronado, and essentially what he was having a look for the 7 cities of Cibola, the 7 cities here. And the 7 cities corresponded to El Dorado, Paititi, City of the Caesars, Lake Parima, Manoa, Antilia, and Quivera. Today it's located around the Arkansas River in central Kansas, that's what they say anyway, and it was not a city of gold, and it was just a community of Wichita people. That's the official thing. So where do the stories come from? Well, from one of the historians, one of the expeditions, it says, in the year 1530, Nuno de Guzman, who was president of New Spain, had in his possession an Indian, one of the natives of the valley of Oxtixapa, who was called Tejo by the Spaniards. This Indian said he was the son of a trader who was dead, but that when he was a little boy, his father had gone into the back country with fine feathers to trade for ornaments, and that when he came back, he brought a large amount of gold and silver, of which there is a good deal in that country. He went with him once or twice and saw some very large villages, which he compared to Mexico and its environment. He had seen 7 very large towns which had their streets of silver workers. And there were also reports given by 4 shipwrecked survivors of the failed Narvaez expedition, which included this fellow here and
I saw some of black folk. Okay, reports given by the 4 shipwrecked survivors of the failed Narvaez expedition, which included Alvar Nunez Cabeza de Vaca and a black Moorish slave named Esteban Dorantes, or Estevanica, eventually returning to New Spain. Everywhere all at once. Interesting.
He had seen 7 very large towns which had their streets of silver workers. And there were also reports given by 4 shipwrecked survivors of the failed Narvaez expedition, which included this fellow here, another Spanish explorer, as well as a Moorish slave named Esteban Dorantes. And when they returned to New Spain, the adventurers said that they'd heard stories from the natives about cities with great and limitless riches. So when we talk about the lost cities of gold, this is definitely connected. And of course, the official history is that when Coronado and his other adventurers arrived at Cibola in 1540, they couldn't find any gold, and it turned out all the stories had been made up. See from this map here of the Coronado expedition, we can see where he supposedly went and where he found out that it was all nonsense. The forum also provides a load of other pictures that show Quivera in its different locations that we're just going to have a quick peek at. This one here showing it on this corner. Here again, it reminds us that 1492 Christopher Columbus discovered America. Some of these are pretty bad quality, but again, it's over on this left-hand side. You can see they did believe it to be somewhere called the Anian Strait, so that's what they called the Bering Strait before, and they believed it was a lot more south than it actually is. But interestingly, which kind of goes against this whole notion, if you read this here, it says the indigenous of this region, after the manner of the Tartars, live in tents, having no cities. One more showing Quivera on the left, 1492 again, so it's quite interesting that one thought it was 1592. I should probably let it go, but another one here, and again, this one says a similar thing in the corner. Here the people in groups through the plains, in company in that way, in tents, after the manner of the Tartars, and they lead a rustic life. So, pretty poor English there, but basically the people here, they live in groups, and just like the Tartars, they live in tents and lead a nomadic lifestyle. Because people hypothesized that it was down near California, possibly, and then of course looking inland, but Quivera definitely looking like it's on the coast, so that journey that they took, the expedition inland, no wonder they didn't find it, because I would say this looks more like Northwest America, getting much further up towards Alaska, which would make sense because of the migratory route that they would have taken over the Bering Strait. And another final picture, so yeah, you can see up here, we've got China, Cathay, the Mongol areas, missing quite a bit of Siberia, and that's because they just couldn't get up there. Don't forget, the Russians didn't make it to the edge of Kamchatka till about 1690. It was only after 1690 that you're ever going to see a map showing Kamchatka properly. By the official history, anyway. Up to you if you want to believe that. We can see this text talking about Quivera, saying the many different lost cities like Atlantis, lost continent of Mu, Kublai Khan, Xanadu, and it's basically saying the 7 cities of Cibola and Quivera, they fall into the same category. It says it's a city born in the mind of Coronado's conquistadors through their greed for gold. The kingdoms of Quivera and Anian are located on maps of Western America, but they had no more existence in reality than Thor's Valhalla or the abode of the Olympian gods. That is the official line for Quivera, that these guys didn't exist. Tick around. We're just going to have a look at this of Quivera. Obviously, people point to the fact that Tartar Rex is like Tartar Rex, aka King of the Tartars. Tartar itself obviously sounds like Tartars. So that would be, King Tartar King. Obviously trying to suggest that it's a mistranslation, and it's essentially just the Latin for King Tartar of Quivera. And the final King Tartarax is just an article from 1889. It talks all about Coronado going to find Cibola with his team, trying to go to the legendary City of Gold. And we can see mentions of King Tartarax, that this realm of Corvera was ruled by the mighty monarch Tartarax, who lived in magnificent splendor, that gold was so common among these people as to be of little value, that they made utensils and farming implements, and that the monarch Tartarax and his subjects lived in splendor. Their warriors wore helmets and bore shields of gold. So yeah, this is apparently all in their heads. Somebody made this up, and then they went looking for it, and it does mention Tartarax quite a bit. Just talking about to basically stage the whole thing, King Tartarax, the Spanish, etc., etc., and it's what we saw in that last book, The Biblical Memory, Sky. Humboldt, in his Examen, says that the Franciscan monk Mark de Niza crossed the 37th parallel, a line linking California with Virginia, seeking a bearded King Tartar.
Okay. Yeah, this is more geography than anything.
Of North and South America from the alleged discovery of the continent by the Northmen in the 10th century to the present time. Now, of course, that's referring to Leif Erikson and the Northmen, the Viking-type people, who came over in the 10th century rather than Christopher Columbus, and that is in 1851. So it is quite interesting that people were quite aware of Leif Erikson, yet we still have Columbus Day. Why not Erikson Day? Why we came to this book is just for one little mention down here. The book obviously is talking about the ways in which America could have been populated, and it says, Dr. Swinton, author of many parts of the universal history, after stating the different opinions of various authors who have advocated in favor of the dispersed people, the Phoenicians and other eastern nations, observes that therefore the Americans in general were descended from a people who inhabited a country not so far distant from them as Egypt and Phoenicia. One will, as we apprehended, readily admit. Now, no country can be pitched upon so proper and convenient for this purpose as the northeastern part of Asia, particularly Great Tartary, Siberia, and more especially the peninsula of Kamchatka. That probably was the tract through which many Tartarian colonies passed into America and peopled the most considerable parts of the New World. So, of course, he's saying that right here, the Tartarian colonies, very interesting, Tartarian colonies passed into America. So 1851, they're trying to suggest that. And, of course, it was actually a widely accepted thing that the Indians were Tartars, which isn't as much of a generalized statement as you might think, because we actually classify humans into three types, essentially white, black, and brown. And the Mongoloid, is that race thing, because we actually...
Wait. Me and Nick, shout out to Nick Taylor, what have we been saying for years? There's only three types of people: Caucasoid, Negroid, Mongoloid. That's it. That's all that will ever be. That's it. That's all. So shout out to Nick. We've been saying this shit for years.
Essentially white, black, and brown. And the Mongoloid, is that race classification. Anybody from Asia is essentially classified as that. So the North Americans do fall under that category and that classification. Our next source is from the historical collections of the Indians in New England, and it's provided, I think, for the king at the time, Charles II, around the 1600s. We will see, so it'll be from Charles's collection. And this interesting bit down here. Secondly, another apprehension is that the original of these Americans is from the Tartars or Scythians that live in the northeast parts of Asia, which some good geographers conceive is nearly joined unto the northwest parts of America, and possibly a one continent, or at least separated by some narrow gulf. And they were correct, of course, with the Bering Strait. And the Bering Strait is so small. It's smaller than some crossings of the English Channel, some sections, and you can stop. You've got a pair of islands right in the middle that you can stop on and then make the next leap of the journey. You could do it in a canoe very easily. But it goes on to just talk about how they are very like the Scythian people in colour, shape, and manners. But it does actually say about sheep, horses, and camels and other tame beasts that are not found in America among the Indians. So that literally is the question they pose there. They say, if this people be sprung from the Tartarian or Scythian people, as this nation asserts, though these people do seem to assert, I think the Indians themselves must have asserted it, then it is to me a question why they did not attend the known practice of that people, who, in all of their removes and plantations, take with them their kine, sheep, horses, and camels, and the like tame beasts. And of these sorts and kinds of beasts used by the Tartars, none were found in America among the Indians. This is it's a different version of the same document we saw earlier that just essentially says the same thing. Probably was the tract with which many of the Tartarian colonies passed into America, aka, through Kamchatka, from Great Tartary, Siberia. This is not to be denied. It's the most rational way of getting inhabitants into America, if it must be allowed that it was peopled from the Old World. So they're saying if the America was peopled from our world, because America's the New World, the Old World, then they must have come through there because it's the shortest distance. And that just makes sense. Another one coming from about 1820. So yeah, it's the American Indian Origin Theories as of 1820 by Samuel Mitchell. We'll see the paper covers new ground in showing that Professor Samuel Mitchell, formerly of Columbia...
Two main groups once dominated the Americas: the Tartars of Northern Asia and the Australasians of the Polynesian Islands. Furthermore, they fought one another for many years, culminating in great battles of extermination in what later became upstate New York. This New York theory has much in common with the Book of Mormon.
College had concluded that two main groups of people once dominated the Americas: the Tartars of Northern Asia
and the Australasians of the Polynesian islands. Furthermore, they fought one another for many years, culminating in great battles of extermination in what later became upstate New York. This New York theory has much in common with the Book of Mormon. The book then carries on to talk about a rumor of a Portuguese Jew that went around, and of Antonio Montesinos, who claimed that he had been led of God to discover a holy people, a tribe of ancient Jews in the mountains of Nueva Granada in 1641, basing his claim on similarities of sacramental rites, customs, and languages between this group and those of ancient Jews. Many people of the day turned to the respected Rabbi Manasseh to confirm or reject him. Sensing this opportunity to advance the cause of his people, Manasseh ben Israel published in 1650 his famous Hope of Israel, in which he strongly argued in favor of the lost tribes in America, claiming that they had mingled with Tartaric or Asian tribes in ancient Scythia before coming to America. Presenting remarkably little hard or new evidence, he nevertheless capitalized upon the renewed controversy to show that God's ancient people, the Jews, had indeed been scattered and dispersed to the four quarters of the earth.
Okay, so that's the 12 tribes of Is this the 12 tribes of Judah?
Another man known as Antonio de la Calancha, writing in the early 17th century, also posited that the Indians had descended from the Tartars of Eastern Asia. Likewise, the great English observer Edward Brerewood advanced the Acostan tradition, arguing for a Tartarian origination via Alaska, since most Indians frequented the west coasts of the Americas. Other men during the same period, such as David Zeisberger, John Heckelwelder, Caspar Wistar, Pierre de Ponco, and Benjamin Smith Barton, all argued for the Tartaric origin of the Indians, for the Bering Strait theory, and for a common original language. In 1795, Professor Samuel Mitchell of Columbia College returned to his lifelong interest in the origins of the Indians, and he began to formulate his threefold interpretation of American Indian origins and history. Number one, that the three races of Malays, Tartars, and Scandinavians contributed to make up the American population, that the Tartars eventually overwhelmed and destroyed the other two races over a fairly long period of time, and finally, that the final battles of extermination were fought in upstate western New York, not too far from the south of Lake Ontario. Mitchell began teaching college classes in 1816, saying that both North and South America had been formerly populated fundamentally by two great races, not only the Hyperborean or inhabitants of the North, but also the Australasian or inhabitants of the South, the former Tartars, and the latter Malays and Polynesians. So it's interesting to note that he is equating the northern people, the Tartars, with the Hyperboreans. His reason for claiming the North American Indians' ancestors were the Tartars were based on four factors: the similarity of their physical features, the affinity of their languages, the corresponding customs, and the kindred nature of American Indian dogs to those found in Siberia. Mitchell claims that all was going well with the Polynesian derivative of peoples until their confrontation with the encroaching Tartars. Colliding with both the Europeans and the more delicate race of Australasians, the Tartars overwhelmed and destroyed both peoples in a long series of terrible conflicts centered primarily in upstate New York. As China, Hindustan, Palestine, Greece, Italy, and the shores of Africa have been conquered by the swarms, which proceeded numberless times, so have Canada, the regions bordering on the Missouri, the lakes, the Mississippi, the Ohio, and the countries where New Spain and its intendancies now are, quite to Mexico, been subdued by hordes of savage adventurers from beyond the Arctic Circle. He went on to ask, what has become of these Australasians? And answered, they have probably been overcome by the more warlike and ferocious hordes that entered our hemisphere from the northeast of Asia. These Tartars of the higher latitudes have issued from the great hive of nations and desolated, in the course of their migrations, the southern tribes of America, as they have done to those of Asia and Europe. The greater part of the present American natives are the Tartar stock, the descendants of the hardy warriors who destroyed the weaker Malays that preceded them. Mitchell's work was accepted by Uzziah Priest, whose work we've actually seen in this video, The American Antiquities and Discoveries in the West, which was published in Albany, New York in 1833.
Okay, which Indian tribes though? Because you just can't put that on all Indians. But I'm fascinated. Let's go.
Though providing for the inclusion of vestiges of the lost tribes in parts of ancient America via an ancient land bridge with Africa, Priest believes the Tartars, in Hun-like fashion, completely destroyed the more southerly people, who left behind some 3,000 burial mounds and fortifications in present-day Ohio, Indiana, and Illinois. The skeletons found in our mounds never belonged to a people like our Indians, he asserted. Their foreheads were low, cheekbones rather high. We think we ascertain the
Okay, this is African, this is Asian. So this is the women. European female, okay. Asian female, African female. Okay. I can see a difference in the top of the skull. Definitely with the Europeans. They definitely got the... Damn, it comes to a point. Asian, lips extends a little further out. Okay. Asian male skull looks a little more elongated. It looks like it sits taller, like it's been squished. And European just looks bigger all the way around. Interesting. Interesting. Let's continue.
Inhabitants to have been white, like the Europeans, calling the more civilized people the Aries. He believed they were so exterminated by the Tartars or Scythians that but one member of the nation, a warrior, remained. That's quite interesting that they believe them to be white. The Welsh supposedly migrated as well to the New World in about 560 AD, supposedly, under Prince Madoc. So that would be quite interesting. And they moved to the Ohio regions, and there's lots of evidence of the Welsh there. So that is quite curious. Maybe the Tartars were the ones that killed the Welsh in America. King Arthur himself was said to have sailed to the New World, where he was then killed by an Indian, by a native. And if that's a Tartar, that's a bit of a spin on the story. But we won't go into that today. The next mention of American Tartary is actually rather curious. It's talking about America. It's a British letter. It's a letter going back to Britain. It's talking about the colonies. And they're talking about the cause of resistance. And it says the other cause of resistance is the prodigious expansion of the back settlements. Many of the people in the back settlements are already little attached to particular situations. They've already topped the Appalachian Mountains. From thence they behold before them an immense plain, one vast, rich, level meadow, a square of 500 miles. Over this they would wander, without a possibility of restraint. And surely, sir, it is impossible for us to restrain them. Undoubtedly, they will wander wherever they choose to do. They would soon change their manners with the habits of their life. They would soon forget a government by which they were disowned. They would become hordes of English Tartars, and pouring down upon your unfortified frontiers a fierce and irresistible cavalry, become masters of your governors and councillors, your collectors and controllers, and of all the slaves that adhered to them. So it's suggesting that the people that weren't living inside the colonies, the ones that started moving west, they would become like the Tartars, and that they would destroy the colonies. And the response we get back is obviously, thanks, sir, thank you for these kind prophetic declarations. And down here it says, for indeed, whether the colony was placed in Asiatic or in American Tartary, the folly and absurdity of...
Okay, you know what? So when they talk about Asiatics, all right.
Pretending to govern such a colony and to make it subservient to the purposes of British commerce would be just the same. Nature opposes it, as you justly observe, and nature will be obeyed. So they're saying, look, whether we put a colony in Asiatic or in American Tartary, it'll be the same. It would be absurd because nature is against it. They're too far away and they'll destroy us. So it's very curious that they're calling American Tartary. That's the bit, is why are they calling it American Tartary? This is one of the only, if not the only mention properly of American Tartary that we can actually find. There's only a couple. If you'd like to find that book, by the way, there's actually a better version that you have to borrow, unfortunately, but you can borrow it for an hour. But you can find it on Internet Archive. Josiah Tucker, a selection from his economic and political writings, and you can find that section right there. That's up. Ancient Mexicans likened North America to a tree, a stupendous mulberry tree, planted in the land known to us today as South America. The Chinese geographers or mythologists teach that at a distance of 10,000 miles to the east, there is a land over 3,000 miles in width. Now, the land referred to as must be North America, and we know that North America reaches 3,000 miles in width from the Pacific to the Atlantic. And the Chinese accounts further call our eastern realm a Fusang, or mulberry. A mulberry land is there, say the Chinese. The mulberry land is here, say the Mexicans. Like the Mexicans, the Chinese sages declare that there is an enormous tree, the Fu, or helpful Sang tree, in the eastern mulberry land, 3,000 miles wide. As just remarked, the Chinese call their enormous tree a Sang, and the Mexicans call their tree a Beb, both terms standing for the mulberry. Observe in figure 2, which is over here, at Tehantepec, a little west of Yucatan, our continent narrows down to a width of 100 miles. The Mexicans say that North America is a tree and that it has correspondingly an enormous trunk, which at Tehantepec measures 100 miles. Now, the Chinese writers declare that the enormous mulberry in the region east of the Flowery Kingdom has a trunk of 300 li, or 100 miles. A mulberry tree with a trunk of 300 li is there, say the Chinese. A mulberry tree with a trunk of 300 li is here, say the Mexicans. So you can already see the connections between the Fusang and the Chinese, and if you want to read this book for yourself, you can do. We might go into this for a video for itself, because it is very interesting, but I just wanted to bring this up, this connection here. The Chinese clearly knew about America. Once again, if you'd like to read this, here it is. You can find it on archive.org. Very easy. It was published in 1913. Ancient Chinese account of the Grand Canyon. So if you want to read that, go ahead and do so. Very soon after the flood, of course, the biblical flood is what they believe in, but also all along the different eras of time, different races of men, Polynesians, Malays, Australasians, Phoenicians, Egyptians, Greeks, Romans, Israelites, Tartars, Scandinavians, Danes, Norwegians, Welsh, and Scottish have colonized different parts of the continent. And Josiah Priest also believed that before the flood, America was actually the country of Noah. It was where the ark was erected, and it was possibly where giants were in the biblical references. This book, another source on, so it's just talking about Tartarax. In early 1541, Coronado set out to find it, told of new and even more dazzling stories of Quivera. To the northeast, there was a river 7 miles wide within its depth.
Wasn't there like an old belief that the Ark was somewhere in Tennessee? One of those southern states. I remember that was an old theory that the Ark was never where over there. It was always here in the southern states. I could be wrong.
Depths were huge fish as large as horses. Tartarax the ruler slept in a garden of roses under a tree with thousands of golden bells, and even the pots and pans were made of gold. So it's stuff. I think they're just trying to make it sound ridiculous, to be honest. But that's that. Again, if you want to find that, you can do.
So this guy was traversing America, and when he got to this bit, so we'll read from here. This forest ends just before you reach the Wabash, and from thence to the Mississippi, a distance of 80 miles, all is prairie or meadow. Here commences the American Tartary, bearing in all respects a strong resemblance to the Asiatic. He describes it, and below says, in all these features we recognize a likeness to the ancient Tartary, which would be entire and complete, could we see its natives metamorphosed into horsemen. Obviously because the Indians were supposedly not the same level of horsemen as ancient Tartary. The reason that this is conflicting is because there are different documents printed of this same text. And in some of the texts, this word here, this one, has been replaced with an. So it says, here commences an American Tartary. So this is where the confusion will come in, because they say, oh no, he was saying it's an American Tartary, because it looks like Tartary. To him, he got there and he's like, wow, this to me just looks like Tartary. However, some texts will say the American Tartary, which, again, is it referring to the American Tartary, or is it the American Tartary that guy referred to? And that's all up for debate. So it's up to you to decide. I've not been able to decide for myself. It could be either way.
Okay,
I'm not sure
Florida.
which ones have come first, because obviously all the books are reprints. It's very confusing which one that is. Right, as far as texts go, this is actually the most interesting, because it's just so left field. It's got some information that just doesn't really make sense, doesn't jive with what we know as history, and it's just kind of confusing. I'm not sure exactly why it's written this way, and I'll show you. So this is the book. If you want to find it, give it a pause and search for that. Or the easiest way to find it actually would just to be type in Hokata Tartary or something on Google. But if you have to choose as American, it'd be easy. Cross over, and of course it says, here too may be added that Asia hath no territory anywhere which may more easily with numerous colonies supply America than this part of Tartary, as well for the vastness of the country, to which no other can compare. As for the increasing of the inhabitants, who do not admire that according to Michaelan Lithauer, there is scarce a city in Tartary that boasted less than 1,000 temples. So wow, according to this Michaelan bloke, there aren't many cities in Tartary that have less than 1,000 temples. And to see Kanguista, which is Genghis Khan, first king of Tartary, Genghis, first king of Tartary, about the year 1200, in arms, and his successor Hokata, following his father's bloody footsteps, whilst he prepared his sons with 3 vast armies. The eldest son, Jachi, marched westward with 30,000 horse. Batu, drew with as great an army towards the north, and Toglade, being the youngest, fell into the Moors' country above Egypt. Now this is where it gets really weird. Hekate himself marched victoriously into the North America, subdued great parts of the Persian kingdom, and beat the Turks, led by the general Goniata with a great army, in 1241. It's saying that Hekate marched into North America. I've been able to find no other references whatsoever for this, but it's saying he marched into North America. He's saying he subdued the greatest parts of the Persian kingdom and beat the Turks. I don't think it's necessarily saying that those took place in North America, even though it could seem that way. You know, just by the process of the chronological layout, you'd think that he's gone into North America, then he's subdued the Persian kingdom, and then he's beat the Turks. I don't think it's saying that. I think it's saying that he did those 3 things separately. However, what a very strange thing to say that he went into North America. It carries on, as Jacob Placensis and Benedictus Sarmat's 2 monks sent by the Pope Innocent Hekate witness, the great number of the Tartars or Scythians may appear by the several people spread far and near over Tartary. It mentions a load of them that I'm not going to bother listing, but it mentions a lot of the tribes like the Hyperborean, the Khmeri, the Georgi, the Sakuras. It just goes on to squadrons of the great Tartar conqueror Kublai Khan, which sailed to invade Japan, was wrecked on the western coast of South America. The shipwrecked mariners thereupon, through some unspecified turn of the wheel of fortune, founded the Empire of Peru. And we'll return to this document, which is the one we talked about before, the Uzziah priest one with the Mongols and their appearing, because this one is, it mentions a little bit more in detail about that landing on Peru. One of the John was supposedly a Nestorian kingdom founded in the northeast, and Genghis Khan had a war with Uncham, who controlled it, and obviously won, and then in some stories even married his daughter. The conqueror of the king of Eastern Bengal was a Christian, which was in 1272. Under this king, a part of an expedition was sent to conquer the islands of Japan. In large Chinese vessels, and supposed to have been commanded by these Christian Nestorians as officers, being more trustworthy and more expert in warlike maneuvers than the Mongol natives. This expedition by some means found their way from the Japan Islands, which are west from North America, to the coast of America in the same latitude, and landed at a place called in the Mexican language Culcan, opposite New California. And obviously Culcan, you'd see where that might come from. And then it says in 1273, Kublai, as in Kublai Khan, a Mongol emperor, it appears, became master of all China. At that time they were in the possession of the knowledge of shipbuilding, so that vessels of enormous size were constructed by them. They were solidly and conveniently made as to carry elephants on the decks,
The Peruvians had a tradition that many ages before their conquest by the Spaniards, there landed on their coast at St. Helens Point vessels manned with giants, having no beard, and were taller from their knees downward than a man's head, and they had long hair, which hung loose upon their shoulders, and that their eyes were wide apart and very big in other parts of their bodies. This description is supposed to be a description of the elephants and the riders blended into one animal, as they did in later years when the Spaniards rode on horses. They took them at first to be one animal. There remains not a doubt that the Mongol Tartars found their way from China to the west of America in shipping. The voyage is not so great as to render it impossible.
That's partly why Mongols are extremely bow-legged, because they spend all their time on horses, and over time, because they rode so many horses, they became bow-legged. I've read all this shit years ago, and then to see it kind of resurface is like, oh yeah, huh?
As that a French vessel in the year 1721 sailed from China and arrived at a place called Val de Nadras on the coast in 50 days. The Phoenician letters were known among the Mongol nations. If therefore they found their way to South America, we at once account for the Phoenician characters found in caverns and cut into rocks of that country. A description of what is supposed a Chinese Mongol town to the west, called by themselves when first visited by the Spaniards Talameco, is exceedingly curious and situated on the bank of a river running into the Pacific from the territory now called Oregon, only 4 degrees south of Lake Erie and in longitude 87 or exactly west of Ohio in latitude. It was well built and contained 500 houses, some of which are large and show well at distance. So we'll leave that document there because there's so much to go through, and we'll probably cover it in another video if we remember to. It's from a Pulp Fiction magazine, released in 1947, I believe. Yeah, 1947. So just once again, this is a Pulp Fiction magazine. It's still very interesting, but it's Pulp Fiction because this kind of text out of context, you could really use it for your own advantage. You could really help paint a false narrative with it. But it is Pulp Fiction. But the reason it's interesting is because what it says. This in this person's story, which was printed in the magazine in 1947, they start talking about entering a room, and the character has entered this room, large room with a window overlooking the sea, and he sees a map on one of the walls, but such a map that they'd never seen. So it's a very large map, and it was a map of the world, but a world which was a combination of the ancient and the modern. And it says Macedonia and Greece rubbed elbows, one as large as the other. The United States was called American Tartary. Russia was the land of the Khan of Greater Russia. Siberia of Lesser Russia. Germany was called Teutonia. China bore its ancient name Cathay, and Japan was part of it. So I found it very curious that a fiction writer has come up with this. So they must have had some kind of information, unless they just it was pure chance. But I just found that really curious that they put that in. So 1947. Before, when we looked at the document that said about here commences the American Tartary, bearing in all respects a strong resemblance to the Asiatic, if you remember that. Well, to show you what I meant, we come to this document, which was released at a similar time. This one is 1807, and this one in fact says it's essentially the same thing. From the Wabash to the Mississippi, a space of 80 miles, there are nothing but savannas, and in reality here commences an American Tartary. An American Tartary. So you can see how, if it's an instead of the American Tartary, then that can really change the context of what you're trying to say. So that's important that we remember that, because that simple word change can mean a big difference in what they're trying to suggest. Back to Uzziah Priest's book, and we can see this interesting thing here. It says, from all we can make out by observing the growth of timber with that which is decayed, as found on the deserted works of the West, we are inclined to believe that about the same period of time when Europe was overrun by the northern hordes, that the region now called the United States, where the ancient inhabitants had fixed their abode, was also overrun by northern hordes from towards Bering Strait, who had in ages before got across from Asia, the Tartars or Scythians, and had multiplied, and as they multiplied, progressed farther and farther southerly, till they discovered an inhabited country, populous and rich, upon whom they fell with all the fury of Attila and the Huns. So we can only assume that that's suggesting when the northern hordes, as in the golden hordes, were falling upon Europe around the 12 to 1300s, that the hordes that were placed in the Alaskan regions and had crossed into the northern parts of Canada and moved south, they actually started moving south now, and they fell upon the inhabitants of America. That's actually seems to be suggesting this is a recent thing. This is why it's debatable. Europe has been overrun a couple times by hordes, so you could suggest that it's actually talking about the hordes of Attila the Hun, as it mentioned here, in which case that would put it at about 400 to 500 AD. However, it could be talking about the Mongol hordes, which did overrun parts of Europe, although it didn't overrun all of Europe, so possibly that's it. As the Tartars have overrun China, so the Aztecs subdued Mexico. As the Huns and Alans desolated Italy, so the Chippewas and the Iroquois prostrated the populous settlements on both banks of the Ohio. The surviving race in these terrible conflicts between the different nations of the ancient native residents of North America is evidently that of the Tartars. This article, coming from the New York Weekly Museum from 1817, we can see up here, it says, domestic manufactures, the pieces of goods prepared by the American Tartars and presented to Dr. Mitchell by Captain Richard Whitley, late of the US Army, are full of instruction. So American Tartars, quite interesting. Goes on to talk about Tartars and some of the references to them, like over here,
it brings up what we talked about before with Dr. Mitchell and his points about the Tartars. So that just shows in 1817, it's in this newspaper, talks about the more cultivated Malays who peopled from southern parts of North America, formed the famous records discovered in New Spain. The ruder Tartars who migrated to the northern regions of the same continent are the authors of the fabrics, not less curious, but in a totally different style, now under consideration. It also talks about how the Indian wigwams, after the manner of the Tartars, are circular and not square. We can see from this book here the journey through Russia and Siberia from 1787 to 1788, but it was republished in 1966. He calls them American Tartars. They have been a long time Tartars, and it will be a long time before they are any other kind of people. The yurt, or hut as we generally call it, or as the American Tartars call it, the wigwam, is in this country a substitute for a tent. So a yurt, of course, was the tent specifically used by the Mongols. In fact, the city of Tenduk, we saw Tenduk on a map before, that's actually named after the Tenduk that's found in the center of a yurt, the skylight essentially in the middle, where you can pray through, because you'd pray to your god Tengri there, and that's called a Tenduk. I have a video about that if you want to learn more. The Asiatic, like the American Tartars, never change their dress. They are all the same on all occasions, in the field, in the house, on a visit, at the most dirty work, on a holy day. It is all the same, and they have never but one dress. It is very remarkable that both the Asiatic and American Tartars have the same caste or superstitious notions of women during their menstrual illness that Laban had in omitting to search for his silver gods when hid under Rachel, who feigned the menstruals. That's very curious indeed. If we come to this book here, and once again, if you guys want to see any of the books, the reason I show you is so you can pause the video and then type as the Mexican and Peruvian kings, their almanacs and palanquins have come from Asia, as certainly as the Japanese in a later age have peopled the Kuril Islands, and the Moguls of a very remote age, Kamchatka. A different document here that we're looking at, Voyages of the Self, Pairs, Parallels and Patterns in American Art and Literature. Once again, Henry Nash Smith long ago reminded us that a writer in the Portfolio, I like that, Portfolio, in 1817 referred to the Northern Plains Indians as the American Tartars, whilst Timothy Flint spoke of the Southwest Indians as ruthless red Tartars of the desert. This book coming from 1851, The Bible and Civil Government in Course of Lectures, we can see it says here, the illustrious Burke, the unrivaled prophet of politics, as he is sometimes called, described many years ago a crowd of American Tartars armed with the pike and the saber, pouring from the west over the Alleghanies, and sweeping away the wealth and population of our eastern cities, grown indolent and defenseless by the natural course of popular government, and profligate prosperity. So that's saying some American Tartars came pouring from the west, so obviously referring to Indians as American Tartars, flooding over to the west, and they swept away wealth and population from some of the eastern cities. This one, from 1848, horseback, and are remarkably wealthy, having immense herds of horses, cattle, and sheep. They are celebrated for their intelligence and good order. They treat their women with great attention, consider them equals, and relieve them from the drudgery of menial work. They are handsome, well-made, and in every respect a highly civilized people, being as a nation of a higher order of beings than the mass of their neighbors, the Mexicans. And this one from around 1848-ish, it's another Massachusetts Quarterly Review, so again, reviewing books, and I think this was reviewing a historical book that was released. So it goes, our people is the most singular people under the heavens. They are ready to run anywhere and to run through everything. This Antony, gyrating about these pampas, now exhibiting a magic lantern to keep himself from starving with my friend Crosby, at another moment in a retreat like a whirlwind, with whole hordes of South American Tartars after his emaciated skeleton. Next thing slumping into a dirty dungeon, tomorrow strapping it across the dizzy heaven-kissing Cordilleras. I'm going to be honest, that felt like I was just reading the scribblings of a madman, but the fact that it mentions South American Tartars is rather curious, because again, connected to the Peruvian kingdom. Did the Tartars go over, like we've heard? It's very possible. And finally, absolutely nothing to do with actual American Tartars, but in 1938, I found it quite interesting that there was a synthetic organic chemical company actually called American Tartars Corp. So yeah, I thought that was quite cool, actually called American Tartars Corp. The weird things you come across, eh? But anyway, I think I'll call that the end of the video, because it's been quite a long one. We've gone into almost every American Tartarian document I can find. We did have some that we could delve deeper into, which I think
Okay, let me see what else he has.
On these different satellite images. So we've got this from Bing. This is the Bing satellite imagery. We can see Greenland here. It's pretty much just covered in ice, aside from the odd sections like down here. We can see that the whole thing is pretty much the same thing really, except we see more ice in the northern region ice. And the final one is ArcGIS, and we can see again the same thing that was in these maps, which is
okay. Oh, that was pretty good. Where's the one video I was looking? Let me see. Here we go. Okay, the mud flood. The Tartaria mud flood is it? Theorists believe Grand Tartaria was a technologically advanced civilization, unified, peaceful culture, free wireless energy. The mud flood, a massive global cataclysm, supposedly buried the empire's architecture in mud, wiping out the Tartarians. So let's go take a look. Let's go here.
about a supposed Tartarian empire has been gaining traction. A theory that says a super race of giants created grand buildings, harvested free energy, then collapsed after the world was flooded with mud, leaving no records. And apparently, every government and institution on this planet has covered it up. Well, that's all plain wrong. And if you've heard this before, you've been misled. So where does this come from, and why does this conspiracy theory exist? And better yet, how can we be absolutely certain that the Tartarian Empire never existed? Hi everyone, Ken here. Hit that subscribe button, and let's uncover the truth in a special episode time removed from log cabins and dirt roads produce grand buildings. It is a fair question, and it is exactly the question a certain corner of the internet is waiting to answer for you. They will lean in and tell you in a confiding tone that you have been lied to, that no ordinary Americans built this, that the men in your history books took credit for the work of a vanished super civilization of giants, a global empire called Tartaria, whose achievements were buried, literally buried under a wave of mud that covered the whole planet a couple hundred years ago, and then scrubbed from every record on Earth. It is a seductive pitch, and I understand the appeal better than most because I spend my working life inside these buildings. I research and document Gilded Age estates. I've handled the original...
Alright, so I see what angle he's on. Okay, I see what angle he's on. Let's see where this goes.
Architectural drawings, read the yellowed permits, sat with the payroll ledgers, and poured over box after box of construction phase photographs. So let me make a promise at the outset. The truth about these buildings is not a disappointment. It is more astonishing, more human, and more worth defending than any story about a theorized lost empire. Let me lay it out fairly because a straw man convinces no one. The theory holds that a vast, technologically advanced, and peaceful civilization once spanned the globe. It built the world's most beautiful architecture, the world's fair palaces, the courthouses, the cathedrals, the star-shaped forts, and the Gilded Age mansions I study. And it possessed free energy, drawn from the atmosphere through the spires, domes, and copper elements that crown its buildings. Then, sometime in the 19th century, a global mud flood swept the earth, burying the lower floors of these buildings and killing most of the population. Which is why, adherents say, so many old buildings have windows sitting partly below the modern ground level. The survivors, or a cabal who inherited the ruins, rewrote history to hide the truth and repopulated the emptied cities. As proof, believers point to photographs of eerily empty streets, to the stylistic similarity of grand buildings worldwide.
Now, I'm not trying to debate him, but we saw actual in black and white. There was a plan to rewrite the history of Tartaria and when it comes to the Russians and their fight against Islam, or Muslims rather, but I see where he's going, but this ain't gonna work.
And to the conviction that our ancestors were simply too primitive to have built such things. This is the theory. It is expansive, it is emotionally resonant, and it is wrong at every load-bearing point. Let's break it down. For a theory that claims to explain all of human history, Tartaria has a short pedigree. The word Tartary is genuinely ancient, and this is where the sleight of hand begins. Open almost any European atlas printed between the 16th and 19th centuries, and you will find a huge region of interior Asia labeled Tartary or Grand Tartary. This was real, but it was never the name of a unified advanced empire. It was a European exonym, a vague catch-all that mapmakers slapped across the immense, poorly understood stretch of Central and Northern Asia. As European knowledge improved, the label dissolved into the specific names we use now: Siberia, Mongolia, Manchuria, Central Asia. A name got more precise as ignorance receded. That is the whole mystery. The modern conspiracy grafted onto that.
That's what you're on. Okay, you're on. You're one of these. Okay. All right. Never mind what I just showed y'all for the last hour and some change. He just reduced it down to conspiracy theory. Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
Russell Square. And guess what we're doing? We're searching for Tartarian structures. Straight off the bat, we come across this building here. And you know it's a mud flood building when you see windows that have been buried and bricked out. All my days. Buried building. I mean, look at that. These men have put slabs in place so you can't notice there's a window behind it. I mean, just have a look how big that door would have been. And you know already, when you're dealing with mud flood buildings, you're dealing with steps that always lead up to the front door. Because the original front door was for giants. So like I said, if you think this is a street level, you've been mistaken. Oh, you son of a bitch. So if you know anything about Tartaria, you know that there's no way they built this with a hammer and chisel. And what we got the two pillars at the top. And you all know what that is. That's where they would have had natural energy conductors. Oh, you son of a bitch. Now this is what you call a standard building in London. Yeah, and I know you guys are gonna say it's a basement, it's an apartment. This is mud flood, bruv. This is mud flood. Come on, steps that lead up to the door. That's rule number one. And the building just keeps going on and on and on. Oh my days. Look what we've got here. Look at the size of the pillar. Look. Definitely was made for giants. So this is the British Museum in central London. And obviously it's a Tartarian building that they've converted. So, oh, with the meat of the pillar. Definitely was made for giants. So this is the British Museum in central London. And obviously it's a Tartarian building that they've converted. So I'm gonna go inside and I'm gonna see what I can do. But I'm gonna live stream, and the live stream will be uploaded to my YouTube. So go to my YouTube and watch the live stream. Bow. Oh.
All right. We here. This is the rabbit hole y'all wanted.
Extreme diffusion, or they're using diffusion against us. This is the opposite of what it usually is. The idea that pseudo-archaeologists usually use, the idea of extreme diffusion, where everything is interrelated and this kind of thing. In this instance, they're using extreme diffusion, but it's true. Meaning that, yes, by that time, all these cultures were making similar forts and stuff because everyone has shared technology and this kind of thing. Everyone has...
That's my thoughts too. When you see those old world fairs and all this futuristic technology and shit, I'll just be like, it reminds me of the movie with the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen with Sean Connery. They were superheroes, but like the guy that owns the submarine, I forget his name. He was a doctor or whatever, and his shit was so futuristic. But this is supposed to be in the 1920s, 1930s, right? His car had a huge ass V12 in it. That's what I get those vibes. I get those vibes when I look at those pictures from those old world fairs. Like the future of technology is this. This is the future, and it's like, how would y'all even have an inkling of what, But yeah.
Shared architecture,
we're on the same page.
Right? So it's true that all this architecture is similar, but it's not from Tartaria. It's because these different cultures at that point, and we can add the United States, is because the United States and Great Britain and people in Europe and people in Russia were using the same building techniques because that's what worked. It's one of those moments where I'm
okay. We here, man. Let's go here.
Your ass. We've got your ass now.
This
I've
dude's
seen
funny
this
as
building
hell.
so many times, but this is the first time I've looked at it with the mud flood eyes. Now, brother, I don't know where the original front door is supposed to be. As you can see, they got the steps leading up to the door, and it keeps going. Oh, it keeps going. They've got the typical low windows. A bit too low. These are new windows put in, but you can see that nobody builds with windows that low, bro. It's got the red bricks. I know what the red bricks mean. These red bricks are able to conduct energy and electricity. This whole area just looks mad. Like, where would the original front door be? There's so many entrances. Got another doorway there. Probably was a big window. More steps that lead up to the door. Clear sign that it's a Mudford building. Oh, look what we got here. I'm telling you, this goes down deep. Like, come on, brother. That can't be a roof. We're on ground level. Or are we? You see, with Mudford buildings, they always turn it into some type of community centre, a church, a bank, a library. All these buildings always get repurposed. Steps that lead down. I mean, this building has at least 2-3 floors below. So all of these would have been windows that have been bricked out. And as you can see with these windows, they're just non-existent. But look how big the window would have been. It's a mad thing.
Interesting. Okay, let's go here. Last one and I'm out of here.
I want to tell you about a Saturday morning on November 1st, 1755. All Saints' Day, a morning when the churches of Portugal's great imperial capital were full of people, full of candles, full of the accumulated wealth and memory of one of the most powerful maritime empires in the world. And then, at approximately 9:40 in the morning, everything ended. Not metaphorically, not gradually. Everything ended in roughly 6 minutes of seismic violence that would be described in the years that followed as one of the worst natural disasters in recorded European history. The official story is familiar. An earthquake, magnitude estimated between 8.5 and 9.0 on the Richter scale. A subsequent tsunami that rolled into the harbour in 3 waves, fires that burned for days, 30,000 dead, perhaps 60,000. Some estimates go higher. The lower city, the Baixa, the administrative heart of Lisbon, essentially ceased to exist. The sealed archives, coincidentally, destroyed, and I believed that story. For a long time, I believed it completely. But the more I looked, I realised I had been looking at only part of the picture. Because here's what I couldn't shake. The world didn't just move on, it moved differently. Almost everywhere, almost simultaneously. And the deeper I went into the decades that followed 1755, the more I found a pattern, not of recovery, but of replacement. Not of rebuilding, but of rewriting. A moment so historically convenient, so cosmically well-timed, and perhaps so useful for burying whatever the archives had recorded about what came before. Because some researchers believe the mud flood, a catastrophic sediment event that appears to have swallowed entire building complexes across the entire world, may have begun here. With Lisbon. The first tremor of something far larger than one city's tragedy, that the coincidence alone demands we stop and look more carefully. Because the deeper I went, the less comfortable I became with the word coincidence. I came to this the way most people do, sideways. It wasn't a manifesto that pulled me in. It wasn't a late night rabbit hole. It was a photograph, a single photograph, of a building, actually several buildings, in what appeared to be a Central Asian city, with architectural details so ornate, so structurally sophisticated, that I found myself asking a question that I couldn't answer easily. Who built this, and when? The official answer came back clean and fast. Colonial era construction, 18th or 19th century various European influences. Fine. Except that the building in question predated the supposed colonial presence by what appeared to be decades. And the European influence looked, when you really examined it, less like a European export and more like a shared source. Like both European and Central Asian examples were drawing from the same well. That was the first anomaly. The second came when I started looking at maps. Old maps, specifically, maps from the 16th and 17th centuries, the kind you find in digitised European library collections, the kind historians use to trace the contours of what was known and unknown. And on many of those maps, particularly those from the 1600s and early 1700s, there it was. A vast territory, sometimes labelled Tartaria, sometimes Tartary, sometimes Mughal Tartary, or Grand Tartary, or Chinese Tartary, but always there, always enormous, covering in some representations a territory larger than Russia, larger than China, stretching from the Caspian Sea to the Pacific. And then, and this is where the pattern repeats with unsettling precision, by the 1770s and 1780s, the label begins to dissolve. Not all at once, gradually, cartographically, like a watercolour left in rain. By the early 19th century, it's essentially gone. I kept asking, why does a territory that appeared on maps for over 200 years simply stop appearing? Countries don't vanish. Geographical realities don't evaporate, unless of course someone decides they should. That's where the Lisbon earthquake re-entered my investigation. Let me describe what actually happened on November 1st, 1755, because the official account, as accounts often do, underplays certain details that I find impossible to ignore. The earthquake struck in the morning. Early, estimates of its magnitude range from 8.5 to 9.0 on what we now call the Richter scale. It was felt across Europe. In parts of North Africa, there are accounts of strange water behaviour as far away as Scandinavia. The shaking in Lisbon lasted, depending on which survivor account you read, between 3 and 6 minutes. Then came the fires, burning for 5 days, fed by the toppled candles of All Saints' Day masses, spreading through the tightly packed structures of a city that had been, until that morning, one of the wealthiest and most powerful in the Western world. Then came the tsunami. Waves estimated at heights of 20 to 30 feet struck the harbour. The waterfront, the Baixa district, the areas where merchants, administrators and record keepers operated, were consumed. What was lost? The question seems simple. The answer is anything but. The Royal Library of Lisbon, gone. Tens of thousands of volumes. The Torre do Tombo archives, one of the oldest and most comprehensive record repositories in the known world, heavily damaged. Municipal records, trade records. The records of Portugal's extensive colonial and maritime operations, operations that had, for the past 2 centuries, brought Portuguese ships into contact with territories and civilizations across Africa, Asia, and the Americas. Those records, those contact records, the official explanation says it was a tragedy, a natural disaster, and maybe it was. Fire after earthquake is not unusual. Archive destruction in urban catastrophe is documented elsewhere. I accept that. But the official explanation begins to collapse when you look at what replaced those archives in the decades that followed. Because something remarkable happened after 1755. A man named Sebastião de Melo, better known as the Marquis of Pombal, took effective control of the Portuguese state and oversaw what has been called one of history's most systematic urban reconstruction projects. The Pombaline downtown of Lisbon, built in the ruins, is genuinely extraordinary. Perfectly gridded, earthquake resistant by early engineering design. Built with a speed and uniformity that contemporary observers noted was almost uncanny. Where did the funding come from? How were the architectural standards so quickly universalized? How was the social organization of reconstruction managed at such scale so rapidly by a government that had just lost its administrative center? These are not accusations, these are questions, and when you ask them you notice something else. Pombal didn't just rebuild Lisbon, he simultaneously reorganized Portugal's relationship with information. He expelled the Jesuits, the primary educators and record keepers across Portugal's word-spanning empire in 1759. He reformed the universities, he restructured what was taught, how it was taught, and most importantly, what was preserved. The pattern repeats with unsettling precision. Disaster, information loss, systematic reconstruction, new educational frameworks. A generation later, the historical record looks different. The Lisbon earthquake was not the only catastrophic event of this period. Not close. In the same general time frame, the middle decades of the 18th century, there is a cascade of events across the world that individually each has a satisfying official explanation. Together they begin to look like something else. There are accounts, and I want to be careful here because these come from a variety of sources, with varying levels of documentation of widespread geological and climatic anomalies throughout the mid to late 1700s. Unusual flooding events in river systems that should not have flooded the way they apparently did. Sediment deposits in European and Asian cities that, in certain cases, appear to predate the official dating of construction by decades. Buildings found partially submerged, ground floors that function as basements, windows that begin below what is now street level. This is what the researchers who study this period sometimes call the mud flood hypothesis. Now, I'm not going to tell you there was a mud flood. I'm not in a position to make that claim. What I will tell you is that the architectural evidence, and there is architectural evidence, photographs, surveys, building records, raises a simple but critical question. Why do so many buildings across so many continents have their lowest levels buried? Not renovated, not extended downward, buried, with the architectural details of those lower levels still intact, still ornate, still, in many cases, more sophisticated than the levels above. Who buries their own windows? Who buries their own doorways? And if a large-scale geological event, seismic, hydrological or otherwise, did deposit significant sediment across certain regions in the mid to late 18th century, then the Lisbon earthquake, with its attendant tsunamis and liquefaction events, begins to look less like a standalone disaster and more like a trigger. A beginning. The first domino in a cascade that remade the physical landscape of the world, and with it the documentary record that might have told us what that landscape had looked like before. The evidence suggests something much larger was at work. Let's go back to the cartography, because this is where the official explanation collapses most cleanly. Tartaria, or Tartary, take your pick, appears consistently on European maps from roughly the 1500s through the 1700s. We're not talking about a peripheral legend, a mythological notation in the margin. We're talking about a named, labelled, geographically defined territory that cartographers across France, England, Holland, Germany and Spain all agreed existed and agreed on the rough boundaries of. The 1706 map by Nicolas de Fer shows it. The 1710 Herman Moll map shows it. The 1744 Danville map, one of the most sophisticated cartographic documents of its era, shows it divided into subregions with named cities, trade routes, rivers. Named cities, trade routes. This is not mythological. This is cartographic infrastructure. This is a territory that someone knew well enough to draw in detail. And then, through the 1760s, 1770s and 1780s, the very decades following the Lisbon catastrophe, the label begins its slow dissolution. The sub-regions lose their names, the cities become unlabelled. The vast interior becomes cartographically a kind of blank. Not virgin territory, the terrain features are still there, but a territory without a name, without a political identity, without, it seems, a civilization. By the time Napoleon is marching east in the early 19th century, the maps he is using look, in that region, almost nothing like the maps of a century prior. This raises a simple but critical question. What happened between 1750 and 1800 that unmade a civilization so thoroughly that its name disappeared from every map in every European capital, apparently simultaneously, apparently without debate, apparently without anyone writing a major historical account of how this enormous was deafening? There is no fall of Tartaria in the history books the way there is a fall of Rome or a fall of Constantinople. There is no treaty, no final battle, no succession crisis documented with the kind of detail that historians typically apply to the end of a major political entity.
Okay,
there is just...
my question is, was the event pre-planned? Right? So, after the flood, you mean to tell me a bunch of people just said, you know what? We'll just no longer acknowledge this civilization we just had, that we just lost? Like, is that... the motive behind it makes no sense. You know what I'm saying? You basically have civilizations that said, you know what, we'll just act like this never happened and we'll just build on top of it and take what we've already learned and then move on like nothing happened. That's my question.
Absence, a slow, quiet cartographic deletion, coinciding with the greatest archival destruction event in the Western world's recent history. Here is where it gets, if anything, stranger. The decades following the Lisbon earthquake and the cartographic erasure of Tartaria are characterized across multiple continents by something that researchers in this space have started calling the inheritance period. It works like this. New administrative structures, new governments, new colonial systems, new municipal authorities appear in regions and cities where, by all official accounts, there was previously wilderness or primitive settlement. They appear in these cities and they move into buildings. Extraordinary buildings. Buildings of a scale and sophistication that, according to the official timeline, should have taken decades and enormous resources to construct, and yet there are no construction records, no labour contracts, no documented quarrying operations, no accounts of the years of work that should have preceded occupancy. In city after city, on continent after continent, the same architectural vocabulary, the same domed roof lines, the same ornate facades, the same proportional systems appears in St. Petersburg and San Francisco, in Melbourne and Chicago, in Bombay and Buenos Aires. Buildings that were supposedly constructed independently in different decades by different architects, in different cultural contexts, sharing details so specific, so technically demanding, that the phrase architectural coincidence begins to feel like an insult to the intelligence. The deeper I went, the more the inheritance period looked less like a period of construction and more like a period of occupation, of moving in, of taking what was already there and writing new names above the doors, not building from scratch, not importing a style, but inheriting and then critically obscuring the inheritance. And that's where the historical rewriting becomes impossible to ignore. Because if you inherit a civilization, if you occupy its cities, repurpose its buildings, redirect its trade networks, you have a problem. You have a paper trail. You have locals who remember. You have travellers who wrote accounts. You have, potentially, records in distant archives that contradict your new narrative. So, what do? You write a new history. A better history. A history with clean origins, with documented construction dates, with named architects and named patrons and named sources of funding. You populate the past with a confidence that the actual past, with all its chaos and incompleteness, rarely possesses. And you wait. You wait for the generation that remembered to die. You wait for the travellers' accounts to lose credibility. You wait for the children to grow up learning the new version, and for those children to teach their own children, until the distance between the original event and the present moment is so vast, so filled with authoritative restatements of the official narrative, that the original question, who built this and when and for whom, sounds not like a reasonable historical inquiry, but like conspiracy theory. I've noticed something about that phrase. Conspiracy theory. It tends to appear most reliably at exactly the points where the official account is most vulnerable, where the documentation is thinnest, where the questions are most dangerous. Make of that what you will.
Right.
The narrative shift that followed the Lisbon earthquake and the Tartarian erasure was not subtle, once you know what to look for. The Enlightenment, that brilliant, humane, world-remaking intellectual project, emerged conveniently in the same decades. New frameworks for understanding history. New institutions of learning. New standards of documentary evidence that, interestingly, tended to discount exactly the kinds of oral traditions, indigenous accounts, and pre-existing records that might have told a different story. I'm not saying the Enlightenment was a cover story, I'm asking. Could it have served, among its genuine achievements, as a mechanism for establishing new epistemic authority? For deciding, institutionally, what counted as knowledge and what didn't?
Okay, let's be
5. Had been operating as a world-spanning maritime power for nearly 3 centuries. Portuguese ships had reached the coast of West Africa in the 1400s. Vasco da Gama had rounded the Cape in 1498. Portuguese traders were operating in India, in Japan, in Brazil, in the Spice Islands of Southeast Asia. They were, in the most literal sense, on a worldwide level, the most connected European power of the early modern era. Their records reflected that connectivity. Reports from the interior of Asia, accounts of cities and civilizations encountered far from the coasts, trade agreements with polities that don't appear in the standard Western historical narrative. Knowledge of territories, inland territories, that a maritime power would have had that unique access to through its network of overland trading partners. Knowledge of, potentially, what lay in the vast interior. The vast named, cartographically documented interior. All of it. Gone. Not reduced. Not damaged. Gone. And here's the thing about archival destruction that rarely gets discussed. It's not just what you lose in the fire. It's what you lose in the assumption that there's nothing left to find. When a library burns, the absence of documentation becomes, paradoxically, evidence that there was nothing to document. The circle closes. The silence becomes its own argument. The official explanation for why we know so little about the pre-Columbian Americas, about the pre-colonial African interior, about the civilizations of Central Asia before the Russian expansion, the official explanation is always at bottom that there wasn't much to know, that these were sparse, primitive, unrecorded peoples. But what if the recording happened and the records burned? What if the Lisbon earthquake was, in the most brutal and efficient sense possible, a filing system reset? I keep coming back to this because it's the part that the official account cannot address. If Tartaria, or whatever we choose to call the civilization, or civilizations that occupied that vast labelled territory, was gradually erased from European consciousness between roughly 1750 and 1820, that erasure required coordination. Cartographers in Paris, London, Amsterdam, Berlin, Madrid, all updating their maps in the same direction, in the same decades, without, as far as I can find, any documented diplomatic or scientific consensus that drove.
Right, so they just had a meeting and said, hey, we're going to redo this whole thing, like, thank God this flood just happened, because now we have an excuse to kind of rewrite it. This is crazy.
The change. Why would a French cartographer and an English cartographer and a Dutch cartographer all independently decide within a generation of each other to stop labelling the same enormous territory? What were they responding to? The pattern repeats with unsettling precision in the architectural sphere as well. The same decisions made across multiple continents in multiple decades by people who supposedly didn't know each other about which buildings to repurpose, which to demolish, which to assign new construction dates, which to simply fill with new bureaucratic life and never discuss the origins of again. Not independent invention, not parallel development, not coincidental convergence, but something that looks, when you stand far enough back to see the whole pattern, like a coordinated response to a shared event. A reset, a systematic reorientation of the cartographic, architectural and documentary record around a new narrative framework. And the Lisbon earthquake, I keep thinking, may have been the moment that made the reset possible. Not because it was the only disaster of that era, not because it destroyed everything, but because it destroyed enough that the gaps could be filled with new stories, enough that the questions couldn't be fully answered anymore, enough that the absence of evidence could be reframed quietly as evidence of absence. When I look at photographs of certain buildings in Samarkand, in Kazan, in the older districts of cities across the former Tartarian geographic sphere, I see the same thing I see in photographs of buildings in Philadelphia, in Edinburgh, in the neoclassical districts of cities that were supposedly built from nothing in the early 19th century by new ambitious documented civilizations. I see a vocabulary, a shared visual grammar, specific proportional relationships between columns and entablatures, specific decorative programs around windows and doorways, a specific relationship between the human scale and the architectural mass that says, to anyone trained to read it, this was designed by someone who understood something about how human beings inhabit space, something that takes...
I mean, look how big this... You build something this big for 5 to 6 feet tall people? Like, this is crazy.
Generations to learn. Something that requires not just skilled craftsmen, but a tradition of skilled craftsmen, a school, an inheritance of technical knowledge, passed from master to apprentice across decades or centuries. And I look at the official construction dates, the mid-19th century dates, the completed in 1847 and dedicated in 1863 plaques. And I think, in 30 years, in 50 years, From wilderness to this, the math doesn't work.
No.
Not without a significant and significantly unacknowledged head start.
I'm gonna leave it there. He's on point, man. He's on point. He's on point. I down this rabbit hole now, shit. So let's go here. I ain't gonna be here too much longer. Okay, so if you don't get Tartaria, you will never get this. The old world airships were turned on us after last reset. Massive campaign to torch buildings. The World War I was perfect cover. They also utilized them to destroy cities all over the world under the guise of fires for decades before this. All those famous cow kick over Atlanta or a spark like Chicago of 1872. Yeah, that's a great point. 17,450 Tartaria buildings in 36 hours gone. Average of one building every 7.5 seconds a day and a half. Equivalent to building seven falling into its own footprint back to back to back to back for 36 hours. Absolutely phenomenal amount of devastation. Also huge amount of devastation north of Chicago same evening. San Francisco got this treatment as well. And countless others. There was a brutal campaign to vaporize hundreds of thousands or more of millennial reign buildings. We are still losing these incredible buildings every day. That shit is crazy. So let's go here.
It's all fake. I think everything has been falsified before the year 1600.
How so?
If you look on very, very old maps, you see that there used to be a country called Tartaria that was in existence. And at a certain point, all of history has been changed. About 1,000 years have been added to the timeline in order to justify land claims, largely have to do with the Eurasian horde and the elimination of the Eurasian horde. Rome and Greece and Egypt were actually active till around 1600. And that Rome actually fell around 1492.
As opposed to what's the conventional timeline?
About 1,000 years before. If you can wrap your head around it, the Salem witch trials took place around the same time as the Inquisition. Columbus was discovering America around the time Rome fell. All of this was designed to erase this entire civilization from history. It's all fake.
Easy, Pete. Yeah, this is a nasty rabbit hole, y'all. This is a nasty rabbit hole.
Place on. So you all heard of the Great Reset of 1776. There was a total wipeout, out with the old and in with the new, to proclaim the Great New World Order. As you can see, it's taking place on this world today. This footage is from the Vatican, deep in the archives. Even though I know for a fact this is not AI, I've done some deep checks with the AI checker, and as you can see, this is definitely legit footage. This is the Tartarian Wars, the old world wars, against the new world and the old world. I know what you're thinking, this looks like Star Wars or Star Trek. Well guys, where do you think they got the inspiration from? You can't just make something out of nothing, remember? Everything came from the old world. As you can see, there's Tartarian buildings and old world architecture all through this footage. So it's quite obvious that this was in Tartarian times of 1776 for the Great Reset to abolish the old world. I know for some of you this is going to be like, no way this is real. But guys, everybody got reset, their minds went blank. Before 1776, this realm was totally different. And we had technology like this. You just can't remember because the slate was wiped clean. This was a different age, a different time. And we're getting reset again right now. The new systematic controlling age. We're going to be controlled by cryptocurrency and the New World Order even more than ever.
This is a panorama of the electric tower from the 1901 World's Fair in Buffalo. Just look at that roaring waterfall with water being pumped right in from the Niagaras. I'll show you footage of the rest of this World's Fair in another video. But just look at this tower alone. Does this look like it was built in 2 years' time?
Hell no.
And then they demolished it 6 months later? I don't know what temporary material you're using, but in the harsh Buffalo winters alone, there's no way you'd build that temporarily and it would survive any inclement weather in Buffalo. And why would anyone waste their time with so much detail just for it to be torn down in 6 months? What a waste. This video alone should dispel the narrative. How are you making a roaring waterfall like that for a temporary structure? And that's just one of the massive waterfalls at this World's Fair. And before I go, here's a few more photos of this electric tower lit up at night. Question everything, friends. Until next time.
America is Egypt.
Can you see?
The Grand Canyon is not just an American sightseeing location. There are strange and dark secrets that lie within. Some have even encountered a gateway to a hidden world. In 1909, the Arizona Gazette published an article about an expedition funded by the Smithsonian. This expedition was led by a man named G.E. Kincaid, and he discovered an ancient underground city within the Grand Canyon. But here is where it gets interesting. This city was filled with artifacts from ancient Egypt, hieroglyphs, statues, and even pyramids. How did ancient Egyptian relics end up in Arizona over 5,000 years ago? Is it possible that they had access to flight? But it gets even stranger. The Smithsonian seized all the artifacts and shut down any further exploration, which led to 90% of the Grand Canyon being restricted till this day. The canyon is home to numerous hidden caves and tunnels, many holding ancient treasures and technologies. Many adventurers used to report seeing strange lights and sounds coming from these depths.
Myanmar, formerly Burma. This is Tartaria, a free energy civilization. Before the recent...
Yeah, man, it's a nasty rabbit hole, y'all. It's a nasty rabbit hole. Yeah, matter of fact, every time I watch there we go. This was back in 03. Yep, this is back in 03, y'all. And this it was, yeah, this guy, the what was he? The Indian guy. I mean, he had the car, he had the submarine, like this shit was crazy, man.
You're in for the long haul. Exactly. Mr. Quartermain?
Yes, indeed, sir.
Wrong Quartermain.
That's it!
Let me find his car. Okay, what was the name of the members? Yeah, the Invisible Man. The Bride of Dracula, right? Captain Nemo, that's what he was. Captain Nemo. He had the submarine, he had the big ass that motherfucker had like a V16. That shit was wild. I'm watching this movie like, what? Yeah, this was his car, right? The Nautilus car, and then he had the submarine. Yeah, that was his submarine. That shit crazy, man. All right, I'm out of here. Thank y'all for coming through. As always, hopefully you guys were entertained and learned something. This is a nasty, nasty rabbit hole, man. This is a crazy rabbit hole. All right, until next time, y'all. Y'all enjoy the rest of y'all's night.
Like a bitch, look like a dog, stuff in face. Talking all my hoes, I'm like